When did things get weird? When did you realize, like at what point in time did you say, hey, this is not normal work? Like, this doesn't even seem like it's from this planet.
That, I can't tell you what day that occurred on because so much time has gone by, the days have kind of fused into one, and I can't separate the days.
Was it a slow burn, or was there a moment of recognition?
Well, the first inkling I had was when I came in. There's this facility that is at S4. It's in the side of a mountain. And normally we had pulled in with the bus and gone around the front through a normal double door. This time that I went in, there were hangar doors open. I went in through the hangar door, and in the hangar door was the disc, the flying saucer that I worked on. I saw it sitting there, and we walked by it. It had a little American flag stuck on the side, and I thought, oh my God, this finally explains all the flying saucer stories. This is just an advanced fighter, and this is fucking hilarious.
Right.
So I went by, I slid my hand alongside it. I got reprimanded immediately for touching the thing. And there was a guy, an armed guard, that followed us in and just said, keep your eyes forward and your hands at your side and just walk in the door. So that was the first time I had seen anything that was weird. It was some time later that I was introduced to my my lab partner, Barry, and we had some of the subcomponents of the craft in the lab, and Barry was very anxious to get a new lab partner, so he was very talkative and couldn't wait to show me different things. And it was in the demonstration of the reactor working where it caught my attention to where this is technology that doesn't even exist. So, I mean, that was the first time I knew that this is really something different.
What was it? What was it? What was it about this reactor that made you think that it didn't exist technologically?
Well, it was I actually have to back up because there were some briefings that I read before that certainly gave me the impression that this was going to be a weird job, but this was the first hands-on thing. This was a small reactor about the size of a hemisphere, about the size of a basketball, on a metal plate, and when it was running, it produced a gravitational field of its own. Now, this is something that we can't do. We can't produce any gravity. The only way we get gravity is from large quantities of mass. But there's no machine we can have that turns on that makes gravity. Like, you can turn on an electromagnet and it makes a magnetic field. We can't make a gravitational field. Anyway, this device was producing that. And Barry said, almost like he was bragging, go ahead, try and touch the sphere. And I couldn't. It pushed my hands away, just like two like poles of a magnet. So that was...
so like when you take two magnets and you try to press them together and they push against each other?
Yeah, that kind of cushion feeling, but you can't get them together. The closer you put them, the more they push. But
and you felt that physically with
my
your hand?
Yeah, now there's nothing that does that. And that immediately caught my attention, going, wow, this is something else.
What was your thought? Like when you felt that and you knew that there was nothing that you were aware of that could produce this?
Then that connected me to the briefings that I read on the first day at S4 was that, everything that I had read was apparently accurate.
What were you reading?
It was kind of an overview. This project was to back engineer the alien craft. And specifically, it was to try and back engineer and see if we can duplicate the technology with available materials. Now, to do this, they split the project into many different pieces for several reasons. They do this on all classified projects, so nobody has the complete story, but they compartmentalize everything. Now, we had the power and propulsion system. So what the briefings they gave me were like a 1 or 2 page overview of some of the other projects that were going on, on the craft. The only reason they do that is just in case what you're working on is connected intimately in some way that we don't know of to one of the other projects. You have to know their, their existence. So, again, they have everything from metallurgy to, weapon potential of the craft. And these were all, essentially very short briefings. But mine was just power and propulsion. And it made it very clear that what I read was accurate.
So when you were reading that, before you actually saw the reactor, what were your thoughts on what they were describing? If you knew that something like that didn't exist, and they're describing it in the briefings, what did you think you were going to see?
I didn't know at the time. I mean, I was reading, I thought, is this some kind of test?
See if you're crazy?
Well, not to see if I'm crazy, a lot of times they'll take in real high security jobs. I mean, they'll intentionally insert nonsense into them, whether it's to confuse the fact or if for someone was to leak it out, they would carry that information along and know where it came from. So I read through the documents, but, I didn't know if this was, part of some kind of test or,
Right.
Or what, or was it potentially realistic? I mean, I really didn't consider it being all that possible as far as being the actual thing that I was going to work on at the time.
How did they turn it on?
The reactor?
Yeah.
The reactor can be turned on or turned off in a lot of different ways. The way Barry showed me, the hemisphere is removed. There's a small tower in the middle. When you put the hemisphere on, the reactor activates. The reactor shuts down. It's load sensing. So if there's no load on the reactor at all, it shuts down. When there's a load present on it, it starts up again.
Load meaning?
You can consider it an electrical load. So although it doesn't necessarily operate electrically, there's no wiring that connects any of the subcomponents together whatsoever. They just have to be in the immediate vicinity. The stuff is borderline magic, and that's essentially where we left it, when I left the project.
So there was no progress made?
There was some progress. I mean, we did identify, at least we think, some processes and had a rough idea, we think, of what was going on, but I think this is a problem that they've had for a long time. And, I was replacing somebody that Barry worked with prior to me. And I think there was some horrific accident that I didn't have a whole lot of information on, but, Barry alluded to that.
A horrific accident, like where someone died, or?
Yeah, where somebody died.
Because they were trying to tamper with things or figure out how something worked?
Yeah, the reactor in particular.
But yet he let you touch it.
Yeah, I think what they were trying to do was cut into one.
Oh,
now
Jesus.
they had more than one there, and that was supposedly there was an unannounced nuclear test, and that's what it was. At the time, remember, they were still doing underground nuclear tests at the test site. But from what I understand, according to Barry, there was an attempt made. Now, this must have been a pretty desperate attempt because it's not a very scientific process to analyze something that way. But it looked like they used a plasma cutter or something like that to cut into an operating reactor.
How many of these things did they have?
They had nine craft altogether. I only got hands-on with one of them, so I can't really say how the others operated.
Did you see the other ones?
Yeah. At one time, and only one time, the bay doors that between the hangars were all open, and I could see all the way through.
And were they all exactly the same?
No, they were all different.
Different shapes?
Yeah.
But they were all from somewhere else?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, did anyone make any attempt to explain or to tell you where they came from?
No one is the least bit interested in letting everybody know all the facts. They want to give you the minimum information that's necessary to complete your task. So you're not getting the story of where they came from. You're not getting the story of how much progress other people are making. You just focus on the small component.
But they gave you some indication that they've been working on these for a while?
Yeah.
When do you think they acquired these?
I really couldn't say. I think they've been around for a while.
So they bring you into this room. You see this reactor working. You realize this is nothing that, as far as like the scientific community at current time, has the ability to create.
We still don't.
What is your life like from that moment on? Is that where everything changes? Because I would imagine the moment you actually make contact with something that's extraterrestrial, whether it's an object or a being, something where you can actually absolutely be certain it's not from here, your whole paradigm, the whole world you live in, is now a different place.
Well, this is the only time it became exciting. The rest of the time, it was really an ominous feeling being at work. But at that time, it was exciting. I mean, now I knew we were on the absolute beyond the cutting edge of science. And I was so absolutely excited to be there every single time I was. This was a fantastic opportunity. And however, in short order, it began to concern me. We really have no idea what we're talking about. And the excitement kind of turned to dread at some point, because the amount of power we're dealing with is astronomical. I mean, to affect gravity, to produce the effects like this equipment does, takes huge amounts of power. And I've given the example before of, taking a small portable nuclear reactor and, putting it back into Victorian times, with the scientists of the time, and just dropping it in a room. And they come and look at it and see that it's producing power and wonder how it works, so they start taking it apart. And as soon as they get some of the shielding off, the people are going to drop dead because of the radiation inside. Now, the people have no idea that radiation even exists back then. But anybody that comes in to check on them will also drop dead. And, there's no reason that exact scenario couldn't happen with what we're dealing with. We have no idea how the physics operate within this thing. The power levels are, like I said, astronomical. Like, it's incredibly dangerous to tinker with something like that. And, in some respects, we were guinea pigs. Just try to find out how to make this thing.
So they had a series, as far as you surmised, they had a series of different scientists try to back engineer this thing, try to figure out what this thing was, and they would bring in new people and let's throw Bob at it.
Yeah.
And
I don't know how many, but I knew there was certainly one before me, and I knew he died during the analysis of the reactor itself.
And you don't know how many have worked on it, and no one gave any
This could have been there
indication.
for 50 years. It could have been there for 5 years.
When they're giving
really
you instructions, what are they saying? Like when they're giving you direction, they're showing you all this stuff. Like what are they saying? What are they asking of you?
Well, essentially what they ask is what I said. We are just to gather as much information as possible, find out how it operates, and see if we can duplicate it.
But they never told you where it was from. They never let you ask questions about where it's from.
Well, if the information I read in the briefings was accurate, now what I do have to say is the information that pertained directly to the reactor was accurate. What I read did jive with reality.
In terms of how?
In terms of how it was made, what we saw, how it operated, the materials, how it, turned on, and what was discovered about it. I'm sorry, the migraine is really making it hard for me to think here.
Sorry, no, we talked that before the podcast. You tell our buddy Bob was getting a migraine. I know you're very stressed out by this, which is one of the reasons why I appreciate you doing this.
Where was I already?
We were talking about
right,
the way you explained it.
And so there was some paperwork that indicated that this was from the Zeta Reticuli star system. Now, how they obtained that, I haven't the slightest idea. But it wasn't just from the Zeta Reticuli star system. It was what they called ZR3. So it was a third planet in that star system. So there was no other information about it other than that's supposedly where the craft came from. Now, is that true? I don't know. I have no way of verifying that. But that was printed in the same materials that referenced the reactor. Now, I looked that stuff up when I went home. And Zeta Reticuli is a binary star, two stars that orbit one another. And it's only visible in the southern hemisphere, and it's about 30-some-odd light years away. So that's literally all the information I have about that. I don't know how they found out it came from there.
And you also probably have some suspicions that they give you some disinformation like you were talking about before, where they would...
Yeah.
Yeah, to I mean, if you ever decided to talk about this, they add in a bunch of nonsense to make whatever is factual look ridiculous.
Right. Or be able to trace it down. Like, hey, this fax came out and, this Lazar guy said it came from Zeta Reticuli, so they knew it would
when
be
you
me.
read Zeta Reticuli, were you like, what in the fuck is this?
Well, reading all of the stuff, it was, what in
Right.
the fuck is this?
You're like, why did I sign up for this? Like, what?
No, to me, this was cool. This
Right.
was interesting. I was just excited to be out in a secure area, in the middle of the desert. I said,
Right.
this is awesome.
How old were you at the time?
I was in my 20s.
Yeah, so you're probably like totally geeked out.
Oh yeah, this was great. I mean, I was excited. So I didn't care. I reading through everything, and
So you read through all the Zeta Reticuli thing, but then when you see the actual starship with the little American flag sticker on it,
well,
I think-
was
that later or before?
that was before.
So before. So you see the thing before, and you say, "Oh, this is
Wait,
American."
what's that before?
Hard, so many years.
I can't.
Either way, it doesn't matter.
The days have fused together. It's so hard to separate what happened in each visit to the
Do you remember
place.
the thought process when you read that it's from Zeta Reticuli?
Yeah, it didn't hit me like a ton of bricks or anything. It was just like, yeah, okay. And,
You think it was bullshit?
I don't know.
You just were
I
like,
don't.
okay.
Now I don't. I mean, because when I
Right.
read it, I hadn't verified anything, and this was just a bunch of stuff I was reading, and I thought maybe after this they're just going to give me a test and see what I can remember in
Right.
crazy information, and
Right.
then it would. But like I said, when I finally went in with Barry, and had hands-on experience with what they were talking about, it took on a completely different meaning.
So there's a plate, there's this thing that looks like a half a basketball, and when it's on, you can't come anywhere near it. You can't touch it.
Right.
How is what is gravity about that? Like the concept of gravity to most people is gravity is bringing something towards it.
Right. Well, I guess you would say it's anti-gravity. It's gravity shifted 180 degrees. It's anti-gravity.
And did they have any understanding about what could possibly create this effect? Did they have any areas where they'd like you to look into?
No, they knew there was a fuel source in it, and they were proficient at making it work. And again, my analogy to something like this is you can drop a motorcycle off in the wagon train days and just leave it with the keys parked outside, somebody's place. Everybody will come around it and they'll poke and prod, and eventually they'll turn the key, get it to start, and become proficient at riding it.
Yeah.
But they won't be able to understand what the hell's going on. They won't be able to make the plastic fender, much less anything else. And I think that's exactly the state we were at. We played around with the parts long enough before I got there where they could make the reactor operate, take the fuel out, and know that it makes it work. How exactly what was going on in the reactor remained a mystery at the time. I think we made some progress on what was going on inside, but I don't think anybody really knew anything. They could just watch what was going on and make note of it. Now, believe it or not, I'm not into UFOs. I don't follow stories or,
Even after your experiences?
No, I'm fascinated with the technology, and it irks me like every night I go to sleep that, that it was my own doing, essentially, that prevented me from continuing on in the project. I mean, it's that to be on that cutting edge of technology is so alluring to me.
Right.
But by the same token, I don't really care that there's aliens or where they come from. I mean, the prize is the technology, and that's what I'm fascinated by. But so I don't listen to UFO stories and that sort of thing. But George Knapp is, he's the guy that has the contacts and tries to thread everything together. And what he recently told me is he found, I don't know, it was either documentation or people that he spoke to. It's that the existence of this project, the project that I was on, it's something that they seem to take out every 8 or 10 years.
So that's a very specific memo, and this is actually, this is the first time I'll be very clear with people about it. It's a big topic of conversation right now. It's called the Wilson Memo. You can look it up. Admiral Wilson met with a scientist who's actually was featured in one of my films, everybody has been debating whether or not this document of a conversation with a sitting admiral at the time is a real document. It's an actual conversation that happened, and this document is real. Everybody wants to know. The world is going crazy right now in the UFO world. I'll tell you straight up right now, I'm in the position to know, and it is a real document, that it is real. So the conversation you read in that conversation was had. I can't attest to every...
You're not being very clear.
Sure.
Please.
No problem. So there was a document that is circulating right now that is really big. It's going around everywhere. People are asking and wondering.
What is this document?
It's called the Wilson Memo, is how you can find it online, or the Wilson Leak.
There it is. Jimmy's got it. The Wilson Memorandum. Use of human volunteers.
No.
I just wanted to make sure that was it. Yeah.
No, that's not it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Admiral Wilson meets with this scientist, and they have this discussion, oddly enough, at special projects at EG&G. And if I remember, the document is from 2001. I'm telling everybody right now, it's real. And we'll see. My history is pretty good with saying if something's real or not, right? So here we go. The document comes out. They meet at EG&G Special Projects. In 1989, they stumble into a problem. This happens. They put the technology away, and then they bring it back out and see if material science has caught up and if they can make any progress. So this document kind of talks about this process. The big thing I get from it, and a lot of it's vindicating to Bob, and one of the things it's vindicating, besides the EG&G thing, is that private industry, so this guy's an admiral, and he says, I found out about your SAP, your Special Access Program. I need to know about it. And he's going to a private part of industry, and he is denied access. And he says, I should be running this program. And they were able to deny him access. So I think the takeaway here is, check it out. I'm telling you that is an actual correct, that is a leak. Now, everything said in that document, I don't know.
What are you talking about? What is said in that document specifically?
It's between a scientist and an admiral that are sitting, and they're having a meeting, and they're talking about the search for the UFO subject, the search to get special access program access to all of these different things like reverse engineering programs. So in this document, they talk about it. I believe that this document, the person that went was employed by Robert Bigelow, one of the guys that has a couple orbiting satellites and all that stuff.
He's the guy who owns Skinwalker Ranch.
No, he's not.
No?
He was the guy that owned
He used
Skinwalker.
to own it. Okay.
Yeah, he used to own it. There's a new owner, and I interviewed him for my other film, but there's a new owner, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that soon. But there's stuff that you'll be hearing about Skinwalker Ranch soon because there's a new owner. Anyway, the whole point of this insertion here is just that document kind of validates a lot of this idea Bob just said, that they make a little progress, then they can't go anywhere. They tuck it away, and then they bring it back out 10 years later and start working on it. What is the limiting factor? I think Bob should speak on this, but it's the material science.
Yeah, it's really where physics is. So I can see them doing that. I mean, I didn't have any information on that, but I think what George uncovered is probably accurate. That we try and do what we can, and once we reach a roadblock, going, we really can't figure it out. It's just friggin' wait, put the thing away, wait for science to catch up, and a decade later, let's take the project out again and see. All right, now where can we go?
But there's got to be someone who remains informed, right?
Yeah.
So you've got your scientists like you and Barry. You got your people that you compartmentalize. You got these people working on.
Yeah, there has to be some people that know everything.
You've got security, and then someone's going to be on the outside saying, "Hey, we need people to guard this building. Don't let anybody in for 10 years."
I think a lot of that is private industry, and I think that's how they keep it. Yeah, I think that's how they because the government is just so leaky. I think that's kind of what they're doing.
That's what the document kind of proves. You just articulated that it is in control of private industry.
What private industry? Some aerospace company, something?
I don't know.
Yeah, the admiral wouldn't name it in the in the conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
So they still have these things, supposedly.
I would guess. I mean, I don't have any information on that.
Have you ever asked anyone that has any inkling of any idea of where they got them or how they got them?
No, but something must have been said to me from Barry. But it was just too long ago, and I can't quite remember what was said, but it just left a seed in my mind. I think at least one of them was part of an archaeological dig. So it's old. At least one of them is old. I don't know if it was the one I worked on, but I remember something to do with an archaeological dig.
Whoa.
So that means it's not just old, it's ancient.
That'd be a great Steven Spielberg movie.
Yeah.
Right?
As all of it would, yeah.
Yeah.
That tripped me
all-
out when he said that for the first time.
Yeah. That's a freak out right
Yeah.
there. Just a couple of dudes with some brushes looking for a Tyrannosaurus Rex bone. They
And-
hit metal.
And when did they find it? You know, that they have 9 of them.
Yeah.
Well, and how could we have not heard about that? What about the guys with the brushes? How could
Yeah.
you uncover something like that? And
Well, Joe's newspaper at home does. I mean, they said it on that first day.
Oh, you mean the Roswell
Yeah,
Daily
yeah, the
Record?
one you told me. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a cover. What is this here, Jamie?
This is the document, but I had to do some digging to find it.
Yes, it's just kind of, yeah, so this is where they meet at EG&G, and this is Admiral Wilson, and there's a lot more coming out. Now, I want to be clear, George didn't put this out. He didn't leak this out to anybody. This is, I can tell you how
Who recorded this conversation?
So this was an employee of, at the time, Robert Bigelow.
And this is in 2002?
Right. Do you remember when he had that government contract called OSAP, the world all knows about now, and he had NIDS that studied the ranch? So that $22 million, everybody is saying it was for ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. The $22 million was for OSAP that was pushed through Congress, 3 congressmen, right, an astronaut. It was pushed through. And that's what that $22 million, by the way, they spend more money on Viagra every year than they do studying UFOs, if it was just this program, which I think is funny.
They probably
in the
make a lot
military.
more money from Viagra
They
than
probably do.
from UFOs, too.
Well, you never know how it seeds into population. But anyway, this program, this is what was the mother program. So it got the $22 million. And really, it was to study Skinwalker Ranch. Oddly enough, that $22 million all was inspired by the phenomenon they were seeing at Skinwalker Ranch, because the scientists, they're seeing vehicles come through like a space in the sky.
Yeah, we went there. I went there
Right,
with Duncan.
yeah,
We interviewed a bunch of people that seemed full of shit, but a couple that didn't.
But
It was
the-
very, very interesting.
Totally. And if you look, I spent a lot of time in the area. I'm not talking about those stories. I'm saying there were scientists hired by the government, right, through Bigelow to study the ranch because they thought it was important. And, you know, whatever. The point is that $22 million was to study that. Then we have ATIP, which is like an auxiliary kind of program of military sightings, like Commander Fravers and that sort of thing. This document is just one of those things that has now come forward that through the Bigelow studies, it was government funded, and then it was personally funded and then government funded. It's just one of those things that kind of shakes you, because you got this military guy who can't get access because of the private industry that's holding these non-terrestrial materials, that they can't study it. So that's the claim right now. Give it some time, let people dig more into this. It's fascinating, man.
Yeah.
When you hear about stories about these fighter pilots finding these objects in the sky that exhibit extraordinary capabilities and don't have all the signatures of traditional propulsion systems, what is your thoughts?
Generally, I tend to be agnostic to the topic. I have a lot of friends that are extremely interested in a lot of things that are out and about in the in the media and in the literature. But generally, I tend to be agnostic, and here's why. In everything that's currently out that people talk about and highlight, it's difficult for me to take the data and the evidence and then pull that into the work that we do in the lab with some of the different test devices we work with as we kind of explore the frontiers of where physics and propulsion might intersect. It's hard to take that and turn that into some kind of an action plan, if you will. So I'm certainly aware, like David Fravor, the experience that he had with, I think he calls them Tic Tacs, right? An amazing account. And there's multiple people that saw it, multiple platforms that saw it. And so to start with, right, I thought maybe there was a small chance that was just like we have stealth technology, right, where if you want to hide a plane, what if we had the ability to project something right, through some mechanism where we could make people go where we wanted them to go, right? Because I know there's a technology that uses like two different lasers that triangulate a certain point in open air, and they put enough energy into a particular location that they ionize the air, and so it creates like a bright pixel. And so they use that to create three-dimensional displays that kind of look like they're just floating out in air. Now, they're not quite as big as what we saw described with the Nimitz encounter on the West Coast. So I thought for a little while maybe that might be something that we're seeing.
They can project plasma as well, right? Is that the same thing?
It's the same thing, right? So that the two lasers intersect, they ionize the air, which creates a plasma.
And
right?
they can do this over long distances as well, right?
I don't know about long distances. I know they can do it over short distances. Okay. And so for a while there, I wondered if that might be something that could explain some of what
that makes sense.
What David Fravor and the group saw.
The only problem would be the radar, because I don't know if you wouldn't pick up that on radar, would you? Because it's not a mass, right?
So the plasma would certainly absorb a radar signal, right? Because it's gonna polarize any electromagnetic wave that tries to go through.
So it would show up.
It might.
Would it be possible to make something that big, that's 20 feet long, out of that?
It's hard for me to imagine that.
Right.
But I think there's one piece of data that just came out in the last few weeks. I think David Fravor's wingman, Alex, I think her name is Alex Dietrich. I can't remember the name.
I think you're right. Something like that.
So she came out, and so in all the things associated with that particular encounter, right, one of the things I've been trying to figure out is how do they describe the specular surface of the Tic Tac, right? Because if it's these plasma pixels that I'm talking about that kind of creates a volumetric display, I would speculate it might be kind of a glowy looking thing. But I think Alex, in her account, described it as kind of a flat type of
like matte, yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of torpedoed my working theory. So, but again, while it's amazing and incredible, and it's something that people want to go think about and go try and collect more data, it doesn't help me do what I'm doing in the lab. And so I think I kind of keep, my eyes dart every once in a while over to that particular topic. Oh, what's that about? That's interesting. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly agnostic as well. I bounce back and forth from being really excited about it to feel like I'm being duped all the time. Jamie and I talk about it all the time. I'm back in.
Right, Hal Puthoff, although he's got a lot of many and varied interests, he's a great physicist. He's published a lot of great papers in the literature just thinking about physics, right? He's got some stuff he's looked at called the polarizable vacuum. And so, in my drawer of preferred papers, I have a number of papers in there that are from Hal's work on the polarizable vacuum because I find that interesting and fascinating. And so there may be some things out there that are adjacent to the concept where you could try and pull some of that together, I guess.
Well, that's a fascinating thing for you to say because Hal believes they have them. And he believes that we have 10 of them.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I know that. Yeah.
Which is just so nuts.
Yeah.
And then, he's a little agnostic on the Bob Lazar story. But the Bob Lazar story, which I'm sure you're aware of, is essentially what we're talking about. Like, you would bring in some out-of-the-box thinkers. And if you found some wildly intelligent young scientist who put a rocket engine in the back of a Honda, which is what he did, you would go, what is that crazy fucker up to? Like, let's have him look at it. What's it hurt?
Right.
The guys at Rocketdyne say he's a wizard, bring him out there. Or the guys at wherever he wasn't at Rocketdyne, he was at Los Alamos. The guys at Los Alamos said he's a wizard, so let's bring him out here. Let's see what's going on.
Yeah, his story is I'm not too familiar with it. Right,
it's the nuttiest story of all time,
Yeah.
and he supposedly, well, they denied that he ever worked at Los Alamos, but then they found him on an employee log, and not only that, he knew the outline of the place. He knew the security people. George Knapp took him on a tour of it, and he knew everybody. He knew the people that worked there. He knew how to get around. Like, he clearly worked there. So that's interesting that they tried to deny that he ever worked there. And then from there, he gets this job where he is flown out to the desert to Area 51 Site 4. And this is allegedly, right? During this time, he can't even tell his wife what he's doing. So his wife thinks he's going having affairs. He's got to leave and fly away at 11 p.m. at night. Like, right, but you can't tell me where you're going? You want to work? Right.
Yeah, you're working late again?
The wife starts having an affair, and because of his
This
clearance...
almost sounds like a movie, right?
It does sound like a movie, which is one of the beautiful things about reality, is that reality seems so fake that sometimes actual true stories are bizarrely fictional.
Right.
So his wife starts having an affair. Because of his clearance, he cannot be working on these things if he could be under extreme emotional duress. So they fire him. They tell him he can't. They don't give him any explanation. They don't tell him his wife's cheating on him. He starts taking people out to the desert, explaining to them, you have to see what we're working on. They fly this thing on certain nights, and they do these test flights around the base. It's nuts. So he takes these people into this area. They see it. They get arrested. When he gets arrested, he gets caught there. He explains what he was doing. He says, okay, I've got to go public or they're going to kill me. So he goes public with George Knapp. Initially, they hide his face, and then he says, you know what, fuck that. Let's just film me. Let me tell you everything. He goes over the diagram of this device, and he calls it the sport model, and it looks like that. That thing that we have right there.
It's almost like a hubcap, right? But
exactly.
It's
That's a copy of it.
Okay.
In the middle of that thing is some sort of a generator that he said works on this unknown element, this element 115.
Oh, some of this is coming back to me. I think I've seen some stuff over the years.
Yes.
Yeah, some of it's coming back to me now.
And essentially the way he describes it traveling, and again, this is in the 1980s, the way he describes it traveling is exactly the way you describe that sort of warp drive, changing space and time around it. And that you would point that thing where you wanted to go, and it would just...
Yeah. That it all sounds very surreal, right? There's another story. Again, as I said, I have a number of friends that are keenly interested in this, and so I've been exposed to some of the different things. And that to me, the Tic Tac account is interesting because it's got a lot of rigorous data, if you will, that helps you go, well, I can't explain that. I can't explain that. I can't explain that. There is another accounting that I just put in the category, my brain doesn't even know what to make of it, and it's the concept of Rendlesham Forest. I don't know if that rings a bell. There's something over in the UK where there's a base over there, and some airmen came across some very weird. I can't even begin to describe.
I'm not sure if I know this one.
It's pretty bizarre. I don't know it well enough to unpack it today, other than to say it's so bizarre that when you listen to the accounts that were recorded, right, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, if you think about if you watch an octopus in an aquarium, right, and the octopus is doing something, you can sometimes understand what their motivation is. There's like a cross species ability to. It's like communication, but without words, right? That octopus wants to go eat that little crab or whatever the case may be. And so our chemical computers, even though they're different, we can look at their behavior. And we can go, all right, I think I understand what that octopus might be wanting to do today, or a shark or a dog or a porpoise. But when you hear what happened in that Rendlesham Forest thing, it breaks all of my guessing machine, and it's like,
what is the story?
A colonel and some airmen reported some weird stuff that was going on in Rendlesham Forest. Yeah, and they went out and tried to investigate it, and they saw some. Again, I'm doing such a terrible job of summarizing it because I don't really know the lore very well. But
here it is, right here.
Everything they saw was very bizarre and crazy looking.
We can read it.
Right?
It says 40 years ago, a remote forest in Suffolk was the scene of one of the most famous purported UFO sightings in history. So, just what did happen? And will we ever know for sure? Victor Thurnkettle was out chopping wood one morning in Rendlesham Forest in late December 1980 when a car drew up. Out stepped two men, aged about 30, dressed in suits. "Good morning. Do you mind if we ask you some questions?" asked one in a well-spoken English accent. Earlier, on 26 and 28 of December, United States Air Force security personnel stationed at nearby RAF Woodbridge had reported seeing strange lights in the surrounding forest. Forestry worker Mr. Thurnkettle, unannounced and unidentified visitors asked if he had been out the previous night. I said, no, he recalls. They said, did you leave the house at all? Did you see anything? I said, what? They said, oh, there's a report of some red lights in the forest. We're just checking. And the two men, very politely but firmly, asked me probably about 20 questions. I thought they were journalists. They suddenly said, oh, well, fair enough. There's probably nothing in it, and left. So I bought the papers every day for the next few days to find out what was going on. And, of course, there was nothing. 3 years later, however, sightings made the news of the world front page story. It proclaimed UFO lands in Suffolk, and that's official. The story was based on a memo from RAF Woodbridge Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt to the Ministry of Defense. It was released by the U.S. government, described as an encounter with an apparent UFO in the forest. Since then, the sightings have been the source of much debate and speculation among UFO enthusiasts and the subject of numerous books, articles, and TV programs. In March, a documentary concluded the sightings had achieved legend status like the Loch Ness or King Arthur. The forest even has its own official UFO trail, complete with a life-size replica. Go back up. Of the flying saucer, and this is the replica with like the Hamza thing on it, that hand thing. Bizarre. Thurnkettle, UK authorities have said they didn't learn about the incident. Okay, but what is the story though? Let's get to what is the story? Scroll down more. What does it say?
Yeah, and that gets into the stuff that it doesn't make sense in terms of what they describe the UFO doing. It's just very peculiar, right? So.
Yeah. They got there, my heart absolutely plummeted. There was nothing. It was an absolute normal glade in the forest with 3 rabbit scrapes. They're all carefully marked. It happened to be roughly a triangle. Okay, what else does it say? What is the sighting? Burn marks on trees, but what's the sighting?
I can show you what the UFO looked like. But
Okay.
I mean,
Sure. That's what they said it looked like?
Yeah.
Whoa. And it had those markings on it?
I Googled it. My Google search said that Grush brought it up when he was on here, but I couldn't find even clips about it. So I don't know that we went that deep into it.
How bizarre is it that it has that symbol? What is that? That's an ancient Hindu symbol, correct? That Hamza symbol?
I don't know.
These are different symbols.
Oh, they're different.
Yeah.
That looks very weird. Huh. So what about this one stands out to you?
I put this one in the category of I don't understand if it's a real account, right? I mean, so I think when you have a lieutenant colonel that's reporting something as factual, I tend not to just immediately dismiss it.
Right.
But and it's not just him; it's several people around him. What they described, right, doesn't make sense to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, in terms of the David Fravor talking about the Tic Tac, I can kind of, that's not totally alien to me. I could, it's trying to maneuver with the aircraft and it's maneuvering to their cap or whatever the case may be. And I can kind of connect the dots with that. But the Rendlesham Forest thing, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, what about it doesn't make any sense?
What they saw, why it was doing what it was doing.
What was it doing?
It just was out in the woods. It was out in the woods, with blinky lights and doing weird stuff.
So we were following and pleading with him all the way out there. Please, just tell us. Please, I swear on my life this happened. He gets in the car, doors open. He looks up, and the only reason why I'm telling you this because he died. He looks up at Marco and I, and he goes, "It happened." Closed the door, and off he went. Now, the reason why I share that is because that's not something that I can put any weight on for the documentary for people like you, right? But as a personal message for me, knowing that level of validation on the inside, it kept us going. It was like, okay, why on earth would he have done that? Why on earth would he say? And that kept Marco and I going, and that was a personal level of validation that...
Is there any conventional explanation why the military shut everything down? Why they had military barricades set up around that area?
No, they did try to say that the creature was this guy who's got some deformities, but I've seen the guy, Modine or something like that. But you talk to the witnesses.
But why would the military shut the town down because of a guy with deformities?
And then for the doctors in the hospital, they said, there was like a midget having a baby or something weird, just something that was just so ridiculous. It was like, and you talk to the witnesses and they're just like, oh, come on, I'm not even going to, that's laughable at best. I mean, these girls came within 8 to 10 feet. Three women, Katya, 2 sisters, Liliani, and Valkyria, 14, 16, and 21. They got within 8 to 10 feet in broad daylight of this creature. And one of the things that doesn't come across in the film, when they saw this thing, they're looking like, what are we looking at here? They're walking through this field, and it's up against a cinder block wall. And one of them was looking at it, what is that? And it was crouched by the wall. It was weak and feeble. And one of them kind of like screeched, like, what is that? And it turned, and it looked right at the girls, locked eyes on them. Liliana grabs her younger sister, who's 14, Valkyria, and hightails it out of there. Katya is 21. She's frozen in her tracks, locked eyes with this creature, and it's communicating with her. Please help me. He wants help. It's weak and it's feeble and it's scared, and it's crouched down. Liliani realizes that Katya is back there. She gets, 100 feet down the path. She leaves her sister, stay here, I'm going back to get Katya. She runs back. And I asked Katya, and I asked all the girls, during that moment of contact, when you lock eyes, I know it's only a brief second, but during that moment of contact, what did you feel? Like, put me there. That's where the title comes from, Moment of Contact, because that was when they locked eyes on this creature. And that's when Katya said, help me, I'm scared. And it was feeble and suffering. And it's a very powerful moment. And these girls have been saying the same thing. The mother, it's the first time I'd ever reported on these so-called like men in dark suits that show up and intimidate witnesses. Honestly, I've been hearing about those cases for so many times, but I've avoided them because it's got so much baggage from men in black. It's just ridiculous. I just didn't even want to be associated with it. But I'd heard it. I can go on until I'm blue in the face. I go till tomorrow morning with the amount of cases, with generals too. But this time, when the mother said that these men showed up and tried to get the daughters to say they were lying and offered her a briefcase full of $100 bills and they could relocate, I don't know. For some reason, I said, okay, for the first time in 25 years, I'm going to report on these guys. And I did. And it's in the movie. You can hear the mother talking about it, and she's so emotional. And the mother came back to the location where it happened, the smell, that stench, and the footprint on the ground. I mean, everybody talks about that stench, that it was so... They said, if you ever take like a skunk, multiply that by like 100,000, that would give you some indication of the level of like how putrid and nasty. It was paralyzing. And it stayed in the areas, like at the hospitals when they did the x-rays, and everybody talks about it. That stench, it was unbelievable. Like it fills your navel cavities and doesn't leave for a week. It was incredible. And then they all said the same thing.
And they couldn't get it out.
They couldn't get it out. Yeah, they sanitized the hospital. The guy said that he had to close off that wing of the hospital while they were sanitizing it because it was so intense. So
How long did it last for?
I heard days and weeks is what I heard from people. And even the mother said when she went to where the creature was, she said that the stench, even there after the creature was gone, got in her nasal cavities, and she tried to flush it out with water and saline or whatever, and she just couldn't get it out of her nasal cavities. Really crazy. But they all did. I mean, everybody talked about that stench, I mean, the military officer, the guy that drove the creature around, I was sitting across from him. You can't see his face, but I did. And I'm looking this guy in the eyes. I'm thinking, I could be looking at a guy that drove a fucking alien around. You have no idea, dude. You have no idea.
How did he describe it?
So fucking intense. When I came back from that trip, people were like, how was your trip to Brazil? What was it like, man? They got great, smoothies and coffee. And I'm just like, you guys have no idea. I think an alien spaceship crashed and they recover live aliens. And we made contact and the Americans came in. That's what I'm thinking about. So I told a couple people. On the last trip I came back, I was just like, I was so rocked. I couldn't reintegrate back into culture. I was just like, fuck, I think this happened. It's the biggest story ever. So people were asking me, even my neighbor who runs that Make-A-Wish Foundation, he was like, James, he goes, bro, I like you a lot and I got a lot of respect for you, but you lost me on this one. And I was like, I don't blame you, bro. I really don't. But listen to the witnesses. Just, that's all I say. And I would tell people, and I realized I can't talk about it. All I can say is just listen to the witnesses. Don't take it from me. But I'm looking at that guy in the eyes, Joe. And I've been at this for 30 years. I'm working on my 7th film right now. I'm looking this guy in the eyes and I'm like, this guy probably drove an alien around. And it tripped me out so hard. And it ruined his life. He's to get this guy to go on camera, just like a week earlier, he was like, I don't care all the money in the world. I'm never coming forward. The risks are too high.
How did it ruin his life?
Because you're harboring this secret. You're being watched. You're being told not to ever talk about this. And you're looking over your shoulder all the time. And they call you, the military calls you periodically. They want to know where you are. And he's got this secret inside him that he can't tell the rest of the world. And he's thinking about all the different, everyone's out there speculating, is it real, is it fake, is it real, is it fake? And this guy drove a body around. Just think about that for a second. Think about the doctor who took the x-rays of this thing. Marco Leal, thank you, Marco, you're the man. Marco Leal found him 8 years ago. And he was like, he confirmed the story. He was still working at regional hospital. He goes, I'll never come forward. Marco kept going every year back and forth. Then he retired. And 4 years after he retired, he agreed to meet with us. He wasn't even sure he was going to go on. And I said, look, man, we'll film you from the back. We'll disguise your voice. Showed us photographs of him at the hospital. We know we've been trying to get at him. Excuse me. At the end of the interview, he said, thank you. I feel so much better. I've been shouldering that burden for 26 years, and I've so desperately wanted to tell somebody, to share that story with the rest of the world. And you meet these people, and you think, why on earth they didn't come to us? They're not trying to sell their story. We tracked them down and begged and pleaded with them to come forward. When I found Martha, the sister of the deceased military officer, Marco Chirizi, we were knocking on doors. I remember the sound guy from Rio de Janeiro. He was like, you're out of your mind, dude. What are you doing? You can't just knock on random doors. I was like, man, if there's a will, there's a way. I'm going to find this lady. And we found her. And it was like this kind of sketchy area. You know, it's like when you get out of your car and you could see like people drawing the curtains back and looking at you and you're standing out like, dude, I stood out like a sore thumb, man. And then we walked up. I had Marco with me, thank God, and we had camera crews and stuff. It's kind of sketchy. And Marta appears, and her husband appears in this he's a big guy, and he's got like a wife beater shirt on, and he looks like he wants to rip my fucking head off. And I'm like, and she's looking at me, and he's just looking at her going, Marta's looking at her husband, and her husband's looking at Marta like, give me the signal, I'll kill this guy. That's the fucking... And I was looking at Marco, and I was like, James, you need to think quick on your feet right now. And I said immediately, please translate this. I'm here to give your brother justice. I'm here to get the story out. Please, talk to me. And we developed a relationship with her slowly over that. And those were the first words that we exchanged. And we eventually got her to come forward, and we talked. She'd gone forward in the past, but she doesn't know who the hell I am.
I want to take you back to the doctor.
Okay.
When you talked to the doctor, what did he describe?
He said that it was a normal day, January 1996. It was a regional hospital. He said every day, and all of a sudden, all these military trucks and police cars showed up at the hospital. They come in armed, and they got a bag. They got a thing in a black body bag. And he was like, what the hell's going on here? They're like, you're going to be taking some x-rays. And he's like, okay. And they had him inside, and they had armed clubs. And I was asking him, like, what was it like? Because when I interview witnesses, I always ask them to project. Sometimes I'll even close my eyes because I'll use their words to recreate. So I'm like living it through them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'll close my eyes, and I'll recreate the scenes in my head with their words. Right? It's harder in Portuguese because I'm having to get it translated, but I ask questions like, what was the atmosphere like? Was there any talking? No talking. Super tense atmosphere. Very tense. Armed guards on the outside, armed guards on the inside, military trucks surrounding. Nobody comes, nobody goes. And he said, first time in the history of my career, I took the x-rays and I couldn't even verify that they were good because they took them immediately. And then they said this event never happened. He said the stench in the hotel, in the hospital was overwhelming. And he goes through the different x-rays that he took, the abdomen, the head, the arms, the legs, the thorax, And it was incredible. In fact, Ubarajada Rodriguez, if you're listening to this, he's one of the leading researchers. He's gone quiet. Peccaccini disappeared for 20 years.
Did he get to see images himself? Did he get to see the body himself?
Oh, he was right. Well, they didn't open the body bag, but he said the stench was just overwhelming.
So they x-rayed it through the body bag?
They x-rayed it through the body bag.
So he never got to see...
He did not see the alien.
And he didn't get to see the x-ray images or anything?
Nope. They wouldn't let him see a damn thing. Nope. Now, there were two doctors. There was a guy named Roger Lear. Roger Lear found out, these are people that I really want to meet. I mean, people are coming forward in droves right now. We just got 2 forensic pathologists for the first time ever working together to come forward to make statements, and they're providing documentation of the autopsy reports done on the deceased military officer. That's the first time ever these guys are coming forward. It's happening right now.
Let's explain what happened to people who haven't watched the documentary to the deceased military officer.
Yeah. So right after the 3 girls came within 8 to 10 feet of this creature or being or entity or ET, whatever you want to call it, about an hour later, it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I would say probably maybe around 5 o'clock, there were 2 military guys on patrol on the lookout for something unusual, is what they were told. They didn't say a UFO had crashed. They were on the lookout for something highly unusual. And it was Eric Lopes at the wheel and Marco Chirizi, military police, in the passenger seat. They were about 1.5 to 2 blocks away from where the girls had seen the creature a couple of hours earlier. And this thing runs across the car in front of them. He had slammed his brakes on, and without a moment's hesitation, Marco Chirizi jumps out of the car and grabs the thing with his bare hands. Yeah. And he puts it in the back seat, and they drive it to a clinic, and the doctor is like, what the hell is that? Get it out of here. I don't know what, leave. So they went to regional hospital, and then ultimately it went to Humanitas Hospital. And so we have testimony from Military X that when he drove it from Humanitas Hospital, it's in the movie, but he drove it from Humanitas Hospital to as a military base where it spent the night in the truck for one night, and then it went from there to Espesex Campinas. It's like a university. It's where all the intellectual scientific heavyweights reside. And then it was there, I think, under examination, according to the witnesses that we talked to, for a day or two, and that's when the Americans flew in to Campinas. And we have the radar military control officer who came forward last year, actually 2 years ago when we were there filming for the last time. His name is Marco Feres, F-E-R-E-S. And he came forward for the first time and he said, yeah, in January of 1996, this plane came in, USAF, he kept calling it, United States Air Force, came in. It didn't have the authorization of the Brazilian government. And he was like, this thing can't land. And some higher up stepped into the room. This is his testimony. I'm just relaying what he said. He said some higher up came in the room and said, let it land. And it came and it landed at Campinas. And then from Campinas, 2 helicopters, according to him, flew to Varginha, Brazil, Varginha back to Campinas. Then they loaded something on the airplane and then off to the United States. And that's where the case goes cold.
Please tell people your credentials, what your background is.
Sure. So, my name is Ryan Graves. I have an engineering degree, mechanical and aerospace engineering. I promptly left doing that to go fly F-18s for the Navy as soon as I graduated college. Did that for about a decade, both operationally in combat as well as in an instructor role, teaching the new students. And we did witness something while we were flying in our jets, but we were doing it we witnessed it in the context of our just everyday flying in our missions.
And what year was it that you witnessed this?
So we started seeing these in 2014 was the earliest that I know. 2013, late 2013, early 2014.
And could you describe what was the very first experience?
Yeah, so for me personally, the experience was simply just flying out to the area like I would any other day. And instead of seeing an empty airspace with just my wing person or another squadron doing something a different block, there were all of a sudden a lot of different radar contacts, which is immediately a problem because, we could be hitting one of those or someone working in our area. And this was happening because we upgraded our radar the best we could tell. We were in a earlier radar called the APG-73, and we had come back from deployment. We entered a maintenance phase, it's called. We kind of do a little bit less flying, upgrade the jets if we need to, do any long-lasting maintenance, and we upgraded to the APG-79, which was a much better radar.
And what is the difference in the capabilities of the upgraded radar system versus the original system?
Mm-hmm. So, kind of practically speaking, it's like going from an analog TV essentially to like an OLED. It's, a digital modern tool compared to more of like an analog classical radar that has more limited range and has less ability to track multiple targets and things of that nature. So just generally speaking, we would expect to see, more objects if there were any out there or smaller objects, but there shouldn't have been any objects out there.
And so how far offshore are you when this is all going down?
Our working areas start about 10 miles off the coast, and then it goes out, 100 or 250 miles or so, though we don't usually use those far eastern areas. But we would only see them over the water. So they would really only be in our working areas, maybe slightly, in between the working area and the land, but never over the land. Sometimes over the bays that are in the area that are quite large, but never just kind of zooming west over land or anything like that.
And is this restricted airspace?
It's not. So that's a tricky question. For us operating in a military operating area, it is not restricted in the sense that you have to be, there's only one person allowed in there. You could have these little Cessnas kind of bumbling in there, but they would get called out pretty quick, both from the kind of air traffic control agency that's working out there, as well as the F-18s and the other aircraft that may be working out there. But in a broader sense, when we look at it in relation to our air defense identification zone, which is essentially a band of airspace that surrounds our entire country, if your flight path originates out over the water outside of that ADIZ and you proceed into that ADIZ, into our controlled airspace, then you do have to essentially have permission to enter that airspace. It's not a restricted airspace like a traditional bombing range, but it is protected airspace. It's our coastal air.
So you have this upgraded radar system, and what are you detecting?
So on the radar, really what we can learn from that is essentially the kinematics of the object. So where is it essentially, and what direction is it going, how fast is it going, things of that nature. We can't necessarily make out the shape or things of that nature. So it's a representation. It's like a block on our screen to show that information. And so when we see that on our radar, we can tell, where it's located, perhaps what's located around it if there's other objects we're detecting, how fast it's going, what direction it's pointed in, what direction it's traveling in. So we call that velocity vector. So if we see this essentially little circle, it'll have a tail coming off of it. And that tail kind of represents the nose of the vehicle, at least as its flight path is going. And so with that, we would typically see an aircraft just kind of trudging along with a straight line, taking occasional turns. But these objects had a little bit more of a, I don't want to say random, but more less controlled flight path. That velocity vector would kind of jump around a bit more. They would not proceed in like a perfectly straight line as you would imagine like a flight navigation computer would take you, right? It takes you from A to B in the straightest line possible. These objects seem to kind of be moving in a direction that was not a straight line, but generally proceeding in that direction. And so they would kind of be meandering slightly, but moving in that general direction, both three-dimensionally and horizontally.
So winding around, going up, going down. Mm-hmm. So they're not on a flat plane, and they're not going in a straight line.
So I don't want to draw too many firm statements like that because we would see them being flat, too. We'd see them perfectly stationary up there, regardless of the wind.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. So what kind of wind are you talking about?
Oh, gosh. I mean, at altitude, you can have anywhere up to 100, 120 knots of airspeed.
What is that in miles per hour?
It's about 100, 130, 140 miles an hour.
So they're completely stationary with 140 mile an hour wind?
Correct.
How would something do that?
That's confusing to me as well. Even if we had something that could just burn that much energy, right? Like if you had a sphere surrounded by little rockets, right? Just imagining something right now.
Okay.
And if you wanted to keep that perfectly stationary, right, against gravity, you could just fire all the rockets at the bottom really fast and hopefully keep it flat, right?
Right.
It's going to have tiny little variations. And then if you have wind hitting it and all this, you could potentially have those rockets try to counter it, but it would never be perfectly still in winds like that.
Because the wind's not perfectly still either, right?
Exactly.
It changes and varies.
It does. So it's almost like it's the wind. It's not even really fighting the wind, it seems. It just seems like it's just there in a way.
Wow. So the first time you see these things, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, the first time really was, well, what is this, right? It's not a UFO or something mysterious at this point. It's at what we're thinking at this point we see on the radar is just, well, our radar is broken, right? These perhaps don't represent physical objects yet because we hadn't, visually seen these or seen them on our camera yet. And so, we kind of like, hey, what's going on here? Is anyone else seeing this kind of thing? But not really like investigating it, right? It's just kind of like, all right, there was stuff out there, but maybe next time we'll take a look. But the way our systems work, when we have all these contacts on our radar, and if we kind of just select one out with our little cursor there, all our sensors go to it. Our FLIR goes to it, which is our camera system. All our weapons, they have like their own little eyes in some sense, and they all look in that direction. And so eventually, someone had one of these selected and flew close enough so that as they look at their FLIR system, their camera, they could see something that was at the spot represented on the radar, right? So there was something there.
So they were seeing it visually with their own eyes?
Not at this point, just on the FLIR system.
The FLIR system.
And so it's a regular camera and also an infrared camera. And so typically we'll roll around in infrared just because it returns a better image, typically. So yeah, it didn't look like an object they were seeing on the FLIR. It just looked like a source of IR energy in a sense, almost as if someone was shining a flashlight. But something had to be there to be reflecting that energy or creating it. So at this point, to answer your question, now we're like, okay, this isn't just an error in our radar. This is perhaps, we're thinking this is real. We have to really respect this as like a safety hazard now. Even if it's just a small, however small ribbon of tinfoil, right? Like that suck down the engine can still take out an aircraft, right? So we have to be very respectful of that.
Like a Mylar balloon type thing?
Potentially, right? Yeah.
But how fast are these things going?
So sometimes stationary, right? Sometimes they would be going around 0.6 to 0.8 Mach, which is at altitude about, 240 to maybe 330 knots, around there.
So somewhere in the range of an airplane.
Yeah, a fighter aircraft would be kind of flying around at those airspeeds, except sometimes they would be perfectly stationary as well.
Right. So it's not exhibiting any sort of patterns that you've recognized in the past.
No, they have actually. So,
although with the stationary, no, right?
Correct. With the stationary, no. With the meandering kind of flight path, no. But I would also see them essentially fly what we call a racetrack pattern. And essentially what that means is they fly in a straight path, and then they do like a 180-degree turn in a certain direction. Then they fly a straight path, then turn again. So that's what we call a racetrack pattern as opposed to a circular holding pattern. We did witness racetrack patterns. In fact, I think there's been some cases off the West Coast just the past couple of weeks where people have also been observing objects flying in racetrack patterns high at altitude with lights. So I do recognize that behavior, but I don't necessarily think that means we have to attribute it to normal behavior necessarily. That type of flight path is important because it's a very efficient way to fly, right? If you have to maintain the position in a certain area, you want to minimize how much you're turning. Because anytime you're turning in an aircraft, you're using more energy than if you were just flying straight and level. And so by having a racetrack pattern, it's an efficient way of holding in a position by maximizing straight and level time and minimizing your turn time.
And how long would these things stay up there for?
So from our experience, and again, we weren't studying these, but they were always out there. They were
Always.
out there when we took off, we'd see them, and then we go to land, they would still be out there.
Like every day?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day.
So you guys go from not having any idea that these things are out there to an upgraded radar system to seeing them every day.
Yep.
What is the thought? Like, how are you feeling when these, like, is there an evolution of the thought pattern of how you're addressing these things and thinking about them? Initially, you're thinking they're errors. When do you start getting a thought that, like, what the fuck is this thing?
Yeah. So that happened when we visually saw one. And the first time we visually saw one, the object was directly at what we call the entry point of the area. So, that box that I told you about in the sky that starts 10 miles off the coast, there's a particular GPS, location and altitude where incoming traffic will fly in and outbound traffic will fly in the exact same spot, but will fly out 1,000 feet lower. There were two aircraft from my squadron, VFA-11, and they flew, took off as a flight of two. That means they're essentially flying in a formation like this. And as they hit the area, one of these objects went right between the aircraft. The lead air crew saw the object. The Dash 2 aircraft crew did not, which is not surprising because they're usually, you're very focused on flying formation. You're just staring right at that aircraft. The lead really has actual leeway to look around. So he saw it, and, he immediately came back. I have to assume he didn't have it on his radar because he wouldn't have flown through this object at the entrance point. He turned around, flew back, landed, and I was in the ready room when he come back, and he had all his gear on, which typically is not a good thing because you want to get that stuff off as fast as possible. So usually means there's a problem of some nature, and he was just sitting there saying, "Hey, I almost hit one of those damn things." And we all knew what he was referring to, even though we didn't necessarily have a name for it, just because we were seeing these so much. And he described it. He described it just as a black or dark gray cube, and that cube was inside of a clear or translucent sphere. And essentially, the apex or the corners of that cube, best he could tell, were touching that inside of that sphere.
And that description mirrors many of the descriptions that people have had of these, whatever you want to call them. Whether they're calling them UAPs now for some strange reason. UFOs is I don't know. Does it have a dirty connotation to it? And is it tainted because of so many crazy people talk about UFOs? Is that what it is?
It does come with a lot of assumptions baked in.
It baked in. So that's something. But whatever it is, that is a design that people have reported seeing before. That this translucent sphere and this cube. Can you see through the cube?
Not to my understanding, no.
So it's some sort of solid black cube that's inside this translucent sphere, and it's just floating around and flying around the sky.
So, that's a good point. Is it floating around? Is it flying around? It's doing both, which is strange, right? Because you could think of that description and go, okay, that's kind of some kind of weird balloon maybe with stuff in it. And that's certainly, one way. If you just view that angle of it, then it seems explainable. But when that, the balloon-like object starts cruising around at, 0.8 Mach, that nullifies that particular idea. And you'll see that a lot where it's not just like that one picture, that one behavior. It's really, you kind of have to zoom out a bit and look at everything in relation to each other and say, okay, why is this weird? Okay, it was hanging out in a racetrack pattern. That's not exotic. But when you learn it was doing it for, perhaps 13 hours.
13 hours?
Perhaps they were out there all the time, So, I land and I go back. And we weren't on a Intel mission to analyze these, right? We're going to do our training. It's very expensive, $30K an hour to fly these things, right? So really the only time we can put energy into looking at these things is when we're kind of transiting back and forth or waiting for a fight to start. And so, it's never like a dedicated analysis.
What's the most compelling modern thing that you've seen?
Oh my God, I can't talk about it. Unfortunately, this is my frustration, Joe, because I know what I've seen. I know what my colleagues have seen, right? And to this day, there's video that's coming in on a regular, routine basis that is very, very compelling. And if
how do they hide this stuff from the general public?
Well, we have classified systems. We hide a lot of
things.
But
how is it getting filmed? Is any of it getting filmed by the general public, or is all this military stuff?
So let me backtrack a little bit. There's a general public that is filming stuff, but from a Department of Defense perspective, our focus now. Aero is a different story, but when I was in the government, we had to be very, very careful of something we called intelligence oversight. Back in the 60s and 70s, the U.S. intelligence apparatus, particularly in the Department of Defense, was kind of naughty. They were doing things they shouldn't do. They were spying on students and they were spying on American citizens.
They were doing
things. Yeah,
crazy.
Right? Say it isn't so. So Congress passed some laws and said, okay, you can no longer do this kind of stuff on American citizens, right? You can't conduct intelligence operations on American citizens. You can't do it. It's illegal, right? Okay. So you have Executive Order 12333 and all these other rules and laws and DOD 5240.1 that all come out and say no mas. So Department of Defense is supposed to focus on military. That's it. You don't bring in U.S. persons' information and ingest them into a Department of Defense database, especially a Department of Defense intelligence database. That's a super no-no. That's called U.S. Persons Information, and it's pretty much verboten. So our focus was looking specifically at military-sourced information. I was not focusing at all on what the private citizens were seeing because at the end of the day, we couldn't use it. You can't do anything with the
And it
data.
seems like you got plenty of compelling footage from the military.
Overwhelming. There's absolutely no doubt that we didn't have to look at civilian data because we had better collection sensor systems from the military that was looking at stuff and giving us better insight.
If you can't tell us about, can you give us some sort of an understanding of like what you're talking about
Yeah, sure.
without being specific?
Yeah, let me see. Okay, yeah. There is a video, high-resolution video, of I can't say what platform it was taken from. I can't say where it was taken from.
Okay.
But an object that do you know how large an offshore oil derrick is? They're huge, right?
Yeah.
They're like almost like a small city, right? They're like one city block. They're huge. They're enormous things. There is a video that shows one of these objects underwater that goes by. The speed was calculated between 450 and 550 knots underwater, and it was bigger than the offshore derrick that it was passing because you could see in the video the offshore derrick, and you could see this thing zip right by it.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of them, right? A lot of them are reported as being transmedium.
Right. So that exactly. Why do we use the term UAP, right? Now it's unidentified anomalous phenomenon because it's all domain. Initially it was UFO, unidentified flying object. And for several reasons they changed the name. One of them, not just because of stigma like people think, but because the word flying object means flight. And
Right.
you have to have wings to fly. That's flight. And these things don't have wings. So that term, we're not even sure is even accurate anymore because they're not necessarily flying. We see them underwater. We see them super high altitude. So the term was changed to unidentified aerial phenomenon. But again, that did not encompass all the observations we were seeing. So now the term UAP, I think the latest description of it is unidentified anomalous phenomenon to help describe this multi-domain or transmedium characteristic that we are beginning to see and record that these things can do. And that is, I'm going to, if I can digress for a second, because that's super important, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
We have transmedium vehicles, right? We have things like seaplanes, and it's a plane and it can float on water. But let's face it, a seaplane is neither a really good plane or a really good boat because it's a compromise. It's a design compromise between an object that you want to perform in the air and in the sea. And that's why it's neither really good at both. Same thing with, for example, the space shuttle. It goes out into space and it can glide down, but it's not a very good airplane, comes down like a brick,
Right.
because there's design compromises and performance compromises. But what we are seeing doesn't have any of that attributable compromise. It's not, these objects aren't slowing down. They're not changing their performance capabilities. They can do the same thing that we're seeing in the air and possibly in space and even underwater. So that is a fundamentally different type of technology than we are used to dealing with.
Is the assumption that they are doing something with space-time and gravity around them rather than using something like a jet propulsion engine that blasts fire out the back and it makes it go fast forward?
Right.
That they're doing something that alters the gravity around them.
Yeah. So
and that's why they can go through everything.
Yeah, so we had some of the best scientists on the team, folks like Dr. Hal Puthoff and some other folks that I'm not allowed to say their names, Dr. Eric Davis and some others, that were doing the calculations, mathematical calculations on how this is possible. And the consensus was by the scientists, not me, because I'm not a physics expert, I'm not a astrophysicist. They were saying that, so let me back up here. Initially, the government for years was trying to identify the different exotic technologies that could explain the different performance characteristics. And it was during the ATIP years that the scientists had this consensus that if you had one type of technology, if you could do one thing, all these other observables now become possible. Kind of think of like a unifying theory. And so if you had the ability to create this bubble around you in a localized area that insulated you from the effects of Earth's gravity. Now, what is gravity? People think that, when I drop my glasses, that's gravity. That's not gravity. That's an effect of gravity. Gravity is the warping of space-time. And that's important because people you hear the term thrown around a lot, but they don't realize that space and time are actually connected. They are one and the same. They're opposite sides, if you will, of the same coin. And so you can't have one without the other. And so you have this ability to create a bubble around you that insulates you from the warping of space-time, let's say in this case Earth's gravity or something like that. Then the way you experience time inside that bubble is perhaps fundamentally different than the way you might experience space-time outside that bubble, because you're not subject to the effects of gravity, which would explain potentially why things don't need wings and why they don't need propulsion systems like that, right? So it's a completely different way of looking at how we understand physics and how we as humans move about. Everything we do is fundamentally force equals mass times acceleration. Right? F equals ma, right? Mass times acceleration, and you get force. This may be something a little bit different. This is not using, again, conventional thrust, or if I Newtonian, right? If I push this way, I have an equal and opposite reaction that way, right? That's how.
Are there any theories as to how it's accomplishing this?
There is actually. Dr. Hal Puthoff about 3 years ago gave a speech on this. A very interesting lecture about this technology. And if you ever have the chance, you really should have him on, because he's an incredible human being. He's also the one who helped start the government's remote viewing program and a bunch of other stuff for the government. He's been involved in a lot of our nation's probably most classified efforts. But he was working with us on ATIP as one of our scientists. And he gave a lecture about 3 years ago to some other scientists about the specifics on how this is possible. I am not a scientist, so I'm definitely not going to speak on behalf of Hal Puthoff, because I'm sure I will muck it up. But I do recall a time when he came into our skiff and gave us about a 3-hour lecture on this unifying theory. And at that moment, it was very much for us the epiphany that a lot of us had been searching for. He's like, look, at the end of the day, this is how it's possible. And that was kind of this, wow. So it's really not.
Can you give us a
voodoo
moron's
magic.
view of how it's possible?
Yeah.
Explain it to someone like me.
Yeah, well, I'm in that category, Joe. So,
Good. We're speaking the same language.
Yes, sir. Yeah, single syllable grunts, right? Yeah. So you have an object like this cup on your table, and you want it to be insulated from the effects of Earth's gravity. So you create this bubble artificially using a certain energetic source at a certain frequency, and it interacts with certain material, certain metamaterial. And I got to be careful exactly what I say, but certain skin of the craft, this aluminum via the cup here, and all of a sudden, boom, you have this bubble around you where what you see on the outside is not necessarily what you see on the inside. In fact, may I do it?
Sure.
One more drawing
Yeah.
for you? Okay, and forgive me, I'm not an artist, so I'm going to do this upside down for you, and then I'm going to kind of scoot this just a little here. All right, let's do this. So, unfortunately, I know your audience can't see this, but actually,
That's
probably
okay.
good.
Some people can. There's a video form of it.
Well,
Well, I'm sure this will get on. It'll be on YouTube as well.
It's probably good that they don't, because I'm not an artist. But
Okay.
let's say this is a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional space,
Okay.
and in essence,
So what you've done is essentially you created a three-dimensional looking grid stacked. It looked like stacked boxes on top of each other.
yeah, right. And so you have location A and location B. And let's say I go from Los Angeles to Baltimore.
Okay.
And it takes me 5 hours to fly at 500 miles an hour. That's a function of distance over time. And in essence, you can mark that linearly like this. So I fly, it takes me 5 hours, there I am.
Okay.
If you had the ability to compress space-time, and not a lot, just a little bit, and you were able to allow these points to be a little closer together, now in essence, what took you, let's say, 5 hours and 500 miles an hour to do it, you can do it in 1 hour, and you can do it in much less time. But to the observer outside, because we're still in the same universe, we would see something like that. We would see this incredible hopscotching ability, to if you will, take a shortcut through space-time. And so what would appear to be instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocity, and other things, now becomes a reality. And so that is fundamentally what these scientists had discovered. And so it seems like science fiction, but when you understand the mathematics and some of the theorem that they've proposed, a lot of these other observables become possible.
So these are essentially just theoretical explanations of how these things are moving.
Yeah, and I'm not a scientist. I want to be
understand.
very careful. I don't want to misrepresent anything. There's a whole lot of other stuff that if you can do that, all of a sudden now makes sense and may describe the observations that people are seeing and why they're kind of hard to see and they seem obscure.
Right.
And so I think from a governmental perspective, that it was kind of a revelatory moment for the folks in our program.
So they realized one of the reasons why these things are weird looking is because they're creating. You want a light?
Do you mind? I'm sorry.
Yeah, take this.
Thank you.
So the back thing, the other side. Push that down. There you go. Bam.
Thank you very much.
No problem. So how much of this is theoretical and how much of this is observed from recovered vehicles?
I am not allowed to talk about what the government may or may not have in its possession, other than that so I went through a very lengthy Pentagon review process. Recently, I wrote, I won't talk about it here, but I wrote something. And I had to go through Pentagon to have a review process. And it took almost a year. In this thing I wrote, I talk about up to the part I can talk about. And they approved for me to talk about up to that point. When it comes to what the government may or may not have in its possession, all I can simply say is that there is very compelling evidence to suggest that the U.S. government is in absolute possession of exotic material that is not made by humans. Now, beyond that, I can't really expound upon. I haven't been given permission to talk about it. But what I can say is what I've already said for the record, which has been approved by the Pentagon. I won't get in trouble by saying it. Is that we are there's very compelling data to suggest that we are in possession of.
Why is the
exotic material.
Pentagon teasing us? Why do they tell you? Why are they allowing you to say we are in possession of something that was not made by human beings, but not allowed to elaborate, not allowed to show these very compelling videos that you're talking about that you've seen?
I don't. Well, two reasons. I don't think they have a choice. I think with now the introduction of cell phones and Ring cameras, the cat's out of the bag. It's the worst kept secret at this point. Two, there is a faction, unlike before in the Cold War, I believe there is a faction of people inside the government that do want this conversation to occur. But equally, there's still a faction of people that are very mad with me.
This stuff is landing or crashing around the world, and unexpected countries have had this happen, and that's why I picked that, because I thought that was a interesting case. And then, of course, Pope Pius XII and the Vatican were involved, back-channeling it through the OSS, which became the CIA later, to FDR, and that's how the U.S. knew something weird happened in Italy right before World War II. But
So this is 33 was the first documented.
that is the earliest one I can talk about. Yeah,
There's something that predates that.
You could infer that.
You could infer that.
Yeah.
So this 33 one you said was in Italy?
Yeah, magenta. So it's I'm bad at geography. I think that's like a Lombardy region. It's like northwest Italy.
And what's the story behind it?
So basically, it looked like it crashed. Right. The original shape most likely was like a lenticular disc-like craft, with like two dinner plates.
What
right?
does lenticular mean?
So like two dinner plates, smushed together, right? The hump, and there's like a bubble on top.
Like the classic saucer.
Like that.
Like that. Okay.
But it looks like when it hits, the edges broke off, so it became this like bell or acorn shaped thing. And there was nothing in it. It was like just an artifact. There was no biological remnants, if you will. So it's so funny because the Italians were so confused. They actually called up the Germans and they were like, is this one of your Wunderwaffe? Like, what the hell just crashed in northern Italy? Mussolini. And this is all publicly available information because some Italian researchers found all these original documents that some people were sitting on for years in Italy. They put a gag order on the press, etc. And Mussolini asked the Germans to come down. And of course, the Germans came down and they were like, that is not ours, but let's look at it together. So that's kind of perhaps a tertiary reason the kind of Axis powers got together. I'm not saying that's like the reason, but I think the Italians and the Germans were so intrigued with what they found from like an artifact perspective. There was at least some scientific and military collaboration during the war, the details of which I'm not sure of, but I know people that know that specific event that are currently still intel officers within this program in detail. But
so was there witnesses to the crash or some sort of an understanding that something had crash landed and then they discovered it?
Yeah, I forget the precise discovery. I don't know if it was like local police officers or local farmers found it in the field, something like that. I don't want to misspeak. I assume some of the Italian researchers might have some fact witnesses that can orally say, "Oh yeah, my great grandfather found it" or something like that. But I don't remember. Off the top
What
of
was
my
the
head.
scale of this vehicle?
It was probably like 20 feet by 10 feet, something like that. Not super huge, but kind of big.
Do they think that this was a drone? Do they think that this was occupied?
There was nothing in it. So if it was piloted, if you will, by some sentience, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. So.
So what happened to that vehicle?
So we knew where it was being stored at a particular location after the crash, and then the military came in and we grabbed it towards the end of the war, 1944, 1945, because, like I said, Pope Pius XII already kind of let FDR know.
Why'd the Pope get involved? Because it's
in
Italy?
Well, interestingly enough, there's like a whole history of human intelligence prior to World War II and old money, the Vatican, the Italian mob, kind of the old country boys did a lot of informal intelligence collection for the U.S. And there's probably some books you can read on it, but it's really interesting. Human intelligence collection wasn't really formalized until the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, which became the CIA in 1947. You had Paul Mellon and all these other affluent guys of all these old money families that basically created the CIA. So that's probably the reason why.
So this thing that was recovered, this was the first documented one that the United States had access to?
I can't get into if it was the first or not, but it was an early one.
Very early.
Yeah.
So it's almost 100 years ago.
Yes.
And so they take this thing and then they bring it where?
Yeah, I can't get into those.
Can't get
details.
into that.
No.
Okay. So they bring it somewhere in the
Yeah.
United States. And was the attempt to try to back engineer this thing? Was the attempt to try to understand what it was?
Yeah, I mean, first of it, obviously, it's understanding the situation, right? What do we have our hands on? And like I've said in some other videos and stuff, that we took the Manhattan Project secrecy and overlaid it on this issue because that secrecy worked well for atomic bomb developments and whatnots. And certainly this whole program in a nutshell, if I were to summarize the 90 plus years of history, it is a reverse engineering program to garner some kind of insight. And of course, not a lot of the things that we've learned from it are directly, ripped off the technology we found, but it has inspired other innovations that made its way into other U.S. classified programs over the year for national defense reasons, and it's a myriad of different things. So
the UFO folklore is that this is where fiber optics were discovered first.
Yeah, I'm not going to break the seal on anything we've discovered or anything like that. And yeah, it's a place I can't go to.
How limited are you
Yeah.
in what you can discuss and what you can't discuss, and why?
Yeah.
Why do they let you discuss any of this?
Yeah, so anything sensitive that I want to say as it relates to like U.S. government activity, whether it be intelligence stuff, military stuff, etc., I have to submit it through what they call DOPSR, DoD Office of Pre-Publication and Security Review. That is something anybody who's been an intel officer, anybody with like a clearance, has to submit that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, if you're writing a book about gardening, you don't have to. But if you're going to talk about anything military and intelligence related, you have to submit. So it's kind of a catch-22 for this office, right? They're only looking at it from a security perspective. They're not vouching for it or anything like that. And that's like any author, right? They could write a book about Navy SEALs and they're not vouching for the story. They're vouching that you didn't say any nasty code words. You didn't burn a specific ongoing classified program. And for them, I mean, I'm not in their OODA loop, but certainly it's a catch-22 for them where if they want to redact and they propose a redaction, they're like, hey, Dave, you can't say these sentences. You can rewrite it and resubmit. You know, we can't necessarily tell you what agency said to redact it, but you're not allowed to say this. They would be basically self-certifying there's a there. So in my opinion, probably the policy is like, if it has to deal with the subject, we're not saying anything. We're not proposing any redactions. As long as he's not burning a conventional program, we kind of have to allow him to exercise his First Amendment rights. And so I think it's like a catch-22 for that office is kind of the short of the long answer.
So this is essentially one of the very early ones, 1933.
Mm-hmm.
How many crash retrieval incidents have there been?
It is double digit. The specific numbers I do know. However, I can't discuss that. And I know it sounds like, oh, I'm being coy or whatever, but you know, this show, any other interviews I do, right? You know, foreign intelligence services are watching, and it's like, I'm not here to help Russia and China calibrate their intelligence collection. Like, oh, Dave said it's this number. We missed a couple. Shit. Let's put it out for the KGB, SVR, and GRU are now going to hit the streets to try to figure out which ones they missed. So I'm here to protect national security, and I'm just trying to put all the general topics out there for public conversation to hold our government accountable, really. So, because I'm here as a fact witness, because we have a constitutional oversight issue because this program has not been reported to Congress in the appropriate way, and I can get into a senator I talked to that has died recently, so I can, explain to you why I'm so sure. Besides what I read, which we can get into what intel reports I read, I did get some stuff cleared. So during my investigation, I'm like, you know what? I need to talk to somebody at the highest levels, right? So, and this will give you an idea of the kind of people we talk to. And this is the only one I'm going to talk about using their name because they died 2 years ago. So in spring 2021, I actually flew with a couple colleagues of mine to Las Vegas. And I met with Senator Harry Reid about 9 months before he died. And of course, he's a private citizen now. And I wanted to brief him on the topic, and I wanted to get his kind of thought leadership on it because, he was a Gang of Eight member, right? Which is the top most cleared senators and congressmen. He was the majority leader, for God's sakes, of the Senate. And I knew, he helped sponsor the OSAP program that I mentioned and where they looked at Skinwalker Ranch and some other things. And I wanted to understand, like, what does Harry Reid actually know? Like, why did he give $21 million to DIA and Bigelow Aerospace for this? So I'm sitting there in Harry Reid's living room, right next to him with some other witnesses that were there with me. And he straight up says, he's like, yeah, I knew we had UFO material. I was denied access for decades. I tried to get access. And then he explained some of his efforts during OSAP. And I was like, holy shit, did the former majority leader just say, did he just confirm this to me as well? I was already talking to these amazing high-level people, but I have Harry Reid literally saying, yes, we have material, and he knew it was non-human.
Did Harry Reid have personal experience with this?
I don't know if he's had any personal stuff in his personal life.
I mean, did he see it? Did he
said,
witness?
In terms of seeing the material himself, he said he was denied access for years, decades was his term, and he actually told me on behalf of me, he had like a weekly call with President Joe Biden at the time, and he straight up said to me he was going to talk to President Biden about this issue, literally. And then what he was telling me about OSAP, I was like, holy shit, I have like 20 other people that told me this, dude. So the real history, what fucking OSAP was, because I think there's a lot of people out there that think they were looking at ghosts, Skinwalker Ranch. Yes, they went to the ranch as a secondary and tertiary objective. But the real reason, so like there's a document that came out a couple years ago through FOIA from the Defense Intelligence Agency. There was this special access program request that Harry Reid, you might have seen this, I think like George Knapp and company have reported on this, that he sent to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, William Lynn. And it was asking for one of the most serious SAPs you can ask for, what they call a bigoted, waived special access program. So waived means it's limited congressional reporting. That is a class of special access programs. And bigoted means it's like by name. And it was like, you can read the FOIA document. It was like, Harry Reid, James Inhofe, Lou Elizondo, etc. And I'm like, why are you asking for the most serious SAP to be created for a program that ostensibly is looking at Skinwalker Ranch and stuff? And it doesn't make any sense. So what really happened there, and Harry Reid, God bless his soul, made this disclosure a couple weeks after we met in the New Yorker, and you can look this up. I think it was like a May 2021 New Yorker story where he says, I knew for decades, and he made this disclosure, not me, so I'm going to say the name of the contractor. Harry Reid said this. We knew that Lockheed Martin had this material for decades. I tried to get access, and I was denied. And specifically with the Lockheed Martin stuff, he was talking about during the OSAP program. And for the people who are on this program, I submitted this shit to DOPSR, got this cleared, so don't freak out, but I'm telling the truth here. So Lockheed Martin wanted to divest itself from this material at a specific facility that's known to me that I provided to the Inspector General, like street address, all that shit, right? And the idea was if they made a security catcher's mitt for this shit, most serious SAP possible, the contractor and the other government customer, which was the Central Intelligence Agency, for that specific Lockheed material. And it was shit that they recovered from like the 50s and stuff. And it was like bits and pieces of like hull structure, shit like that. And so they were going to tech transfer it. And the $21 or $22 million was actually for Bigelow Aerospace to build out, facilities in Las Vegas and material analysis equipment. And I saw the staff meeting slides. I saw the paperwork. Like there's a paperwork trail I've seen on this shit. And I talked to the people involved in this program.
Pentagon officially releases UFO. This is the tweet. It says, new Pentagon formally released 3 mysterious UFO videos captured by Navy pilots. The already leaked videos showed what DoD insists on calling unidentified aerial phenomenon, moving at incredible speeds and performing near impossible maneuvers. This is a weird subject because it's one of those subjects where people automatically dismiss it because it's been so touted by kooks. There's so many wacky fucks that have talked about UFOs that anybody talking about UFOs has to be out of their fucking mind. But then when you see these videos and you see them performing these impossible tasks, like these things are moving in a way that we've never seen anything move before, flipping upside down and sideways, moving at insane rates of speed. Like they don't know what these are.
Yeah.
Aerial phenomena.
What's interesting though is I was reading one of these stories, And they passively mentioned that the sighting was near a U.S. naval like technology station of some sort, like a top secret development. And I'm like,
That could be one of two things. Either it's developed by the people that are at that base, or they're monitoring the people that are at that base. These aircraft, we call them aircraft, are displaying characteristics that are not currently within the U.S. inventory nor any foreign inventory that we are aware of. Maybe they see this shit that's going down with China and all the ships being moved and like, listen, you fuckheads.
the aliens?
Yeah. Maybe they're like, listen, you fucking morons, you territorial apes.
I'd like to think that, but
You don't think so?
Manhattan Project, man. I mean, the U.S. has probably got some crazy motherfucking weapons. You know?
Could be, but the Manhattan Project was also coincidentally right after they started detonating bombs when the aliens started showing up.
That's what they think, right?
Yeah, well, that was when the bulk of U.S. sightings started jumping, and worldwide, I believe, too.
You know, maybe we've slowly been getting more and more information about this. I've been actually reading a lot of these stories over the past several months. More admissions from government, more release of documents, and more sightings. So there's been a big, I don't want to call it, well, a lot of people murmuring that April was going to be the month when we finally learn the truth. April's almost up.
It's almost up.
It's almost up.
We got like a few days.
Nah, man.
The 27th?
You know what I
How
used?
many more days is left?
Do you know?
30? 30?
Do you know about what happened? Do you know about the O'Hare Airport sighting?
Which one's that?
So this was, I think, in like 06 at Chicago's International O'Hare. A UFO came down and hovered above. I can't remember which terminal it was. It hovered for a few minutes, I think, and then shot straight, punched a hole in the clouds. Everybody saw it happen. Now, I had just quit working at O'Hare around this time when the sighting happened, so I had friends who were still there. I had a friend tell me that when this UFO came down, people on Mannheim Road, which is the road on the side of O'Hare, got out of their cars, like just stopped at the light, got up, and were looking and staring at it. And that the people who were working, where we worked for American Eagle Airlines, walked out of the rooms and were just staring at it float and then shoot up and punch a hole in the clouds. And you know what they said? Weather phenomenon. So there's a photo of it. A pilot took a photo of it. This is back when like very early phone cameras, so it's a very grainy, awful picture.
There it is right there.
That's not it. No, that's super fake. I think
what
no.
it is, I'm trying to
These are all
guess.
people trying to fake it. It's really hard to find. That one is not. That one might be it, but I don't think so. It barely looks like
Chicago
anything.
O'Hare UFO sighting 2006. Is that it
Yeah.
right there?
I do not believe those are it. No. So
Well, click on that article. See what it says, Jamie.
That's just some blog.
that one might be on the left, but so many people try exploiting this stuff for clicks and for views, and they make these fake photos. And
That
it was
link's not working?
I've clicked on it a few times. It's just
It was a very, very faint photo from the cockpit. It might be that one right there in the middle. On the left side.
Far left?
It might be that one. No, that's not it. That's not it. Well, there was a really crappy photo of it, and
That might be it.
that might be. It was out of the cockpit of a window. A pilot took a photo, and I wonder where have all the sightings gone since phones became ubiquitous. I mean, this is a simple, I guess excuse. The aliens, they're sentient. They know we have phones. They're like, okay, stop, decloaking or whatever. But I wonder if, why is it there were so many UFOs and then around the time cell phone cameras come out, they're gone.
Well, I think most people are full of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think most people like to pretend they see things that don't really see things. But
Yep.
I don't think that excludes the possibility. It's not like it's not like these things are mutually exclusive. Like people are full of shit, therefore aliens don't exist. I think aliens could be real and people are full of shit. And I think that it's very rare that they visit us. But if they
Why
do,
would they?
how often do scientists go to the Congo to study chimps? I mean, how many people do they send
Let me-
to the bottom of the ocean to look for new life forms? How rare is it?
Let me trip you out.
Okay.
On that idea. We put decoys up for animals. Animals can't tell the difference. What if you've actually met a decoy person and you couldn't tell the difference?
Maybe it's you, bro.
Maybe it's me. That's right.
And
Aliens
that's
put
why
me
you're
here.
able to work so much.
Oh yeah, I'm a robot.
You don't get tired.
No.
So you're interested in news and disseminating factual evidence.
Because what I'm actually doing is collecting a database for the aliens. No, but I thought about this because I saw a photo on Reddit of a puffin, I think it's called, the bird, and they put up a fake puffin, and it's because I think they're called puffins. It's because the birds don't like nesting in places where they're alone, and so by putting the decoy there, the other birds would start coming, and like one bird showed up and was hanging out with the decoy. And I'm like, could you imagine, like, you see, like, we put duck decoys in the water. We do duck calls. And the duck's like, ooh, hey, fly honey, I'm going to come over and check this out. And it's like a wood block. Could you imagine, like, seeing, like, a beautiful woman or someone you're attracted to and being like, ooh, look at that. And it's really like an alien decoy just to, like, probe you and, like, better understand you or something?
Well, the decoy, just the term decoy is weird because decoys are used for hunting. Like turkey, it's turkey season right now.
Yeah.
And the way most guys hunt for turkeys, they take a rubber turkey. You put that fucker out in the middle of the field, and then you hide behind a bush with a shotgun. You go, bark, 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 bark. And then the turkeys like hear it, and they come over and they try to get some pussy, and then they get shot.
So what if, you see some dude or it's like you see it for you, it'd probably be a beautiful woman. You want to get that pussy and, and then she's going like, hey, come over here. And you're like, oh, hey, me.
And then I get eaten.
No, they just, take you up in the ship, probe you, and learn about your butt.
This is the thing about putting things up your butt.
I'm
Most
just kidding,
doctors
man.
don't even do that. Like, they have MRIs now. Don't aliens need to probe you in your ass? I think it's just what everyone's afraid of. They're afraid of things going in their ass. So that's what they think is going to happen if the aliens get them. They're going to freeze me and touch my ass.
Somebody told a dumb story back in the day, and it was the most sensational version. Everybody had to have it. So they were like, that's what they went with.
Maybe they do that to keep your mouth shut. They fuck you in the ass just so you keep your mouth shut.
Or some dude actually got abducted, right?
Yeah.
And he comes back and he's like, they think they won against me. They think they beat me. They put stuff up my butt. They're weirdos.
Do you ever hear
They're
the story of Betty and Barney Hill?
No.
It's the very first UFO abduction story. It's an ancient story. And what's crazy is Angela Hill, who's a UFC fighter, I had her on the podcast. And after the show, she told me her grandpa was Barney Hill.
Whoa.
And I was like, holy fuck. Like, we didn't talk about it during the show, but she wanted to bring it up because she knows I'm kind of obsessed with UFOs. But the account that they have, like, they get hypnotized and he's recalling the abduction and they have like the same story. It's very terrifying. You hear him crying and screaming and, that he was taken aboard this craft and examined and brought back and they have missing time. But here's the thing. If they only did that occasionally, they only came down once every few years and just scooped some person up in the middle of some rural place. Like if you're flying over, I think their instance was I believe it was in Maine. If you're flying over somewhere like Maine, which is a very low population state, and you see a lone car and it's just traveling along the highway, and there's places in Maine where you go from like Portland to Bangor. When you're traveling on that road, it's like 60 miles with nothing, not a gas station, nothing. If you were an alien and you saw a car by itself, you're like, no other car, let's move in, we got one.
Isn't it just easier to think it's the U.S. government?
No.
Why not?
Because we don't have the capability of doing something like that. I don't think the capability of the scientists working for the government is any different than the capability of the scientists that are working for Project X or, fill in the blanks in terms of like what Raytheon, publicly traded companies.
How long? Look, quadcopters don't seem all that complicated to me. Right?
Quadcopters.
Yeah. Like
helicopters?
Like drones. We've seen the little drone toys you buy. They got 4 propellers. Take that concept, use thinner, jets and surround it in a disc so that it's, universally, like it can move in any direction because it's got, because it's
what
omnidirectional.
power source? Where's the gas tank?
Lithium-ion battery. Or
come on, man. You're talking space shit. Like hasn't even been invented yet. Think about how little mileage you can get out of a Tesla. As advanced as Tesla is, still when it's going full out, it can only go for. You get 307 miles if you drive like a grandma, but if you drive like a maniac, you don't even get half that.
You know that they, I could be wrong with this, but I'm pretty sure that they had this flying platform in the 70s that uses gas power. And they've also had jetpacks for a long time.
No, they've had, sort of. They've had jetpacks that are capable of going for like 30 seconds. They don't, I've experienced
No,
these.
I'm pretty sure the jetpacks back in the day went for a long time.
No, they definitely didn't.
We can look it up.
Yeah, let's look it up because they definitely didn't. The whole thing was the fact they were burning gas. And to propel you in the air, they only had a certain amount.
I thought it was like 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes.
Maybe now.
My understanding of why we abandoned jetpack technology was that it was inefficient and heavy and you couldn't carry it without it being turned on. So they opted for larger, what are they called? Chinooks. Helicopters that can carry multiple people at once. When you're wearing a jetpack, it has to be on idle negating its own weight, which means it's burning as you're walking around, which means you get a good 20-minute jump and you got to abandon the tech. And then you don't want your enemies to get it.
Have you ever seen a guy fly a jetpack?
Yeah, there's a video on YouTube.
No,
from a
I
long
mean
time
in
ago.
real life.
Oh, I've seen that one guy, the Iron Man dude.
Well,
Not in real life.
I've been there in real
Yeah.
life. My friend Willie B from in Denver on the radio.
Yeah.
He had a radio show in the morning. I used to do his radio show. I think he still has a radio show. Shout out to Willie. And he had this guy who was a jetpack pilot who came in the parking lot of the radio studio, and fans of the radio show came and did it too, and watched it rather. And this guy flew in the air for about 15, 20 seconds and then landed. This guy was so banged up. Both of his legs were blown apart. He had big braces on both of his knees. I'm like, what happened to your knees? He's like, just crash landing. Both my knees are blown to shit. He had no ACLs in either one of his knees. But
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It's good
Jetpacks.
this is back then. It was
Right.
good for about 30 seconds. 30 seconds of flying.
Well, so the point I was trying to get to is if you take something like a quadcopter, you could absolutely fuel it with gas or
It'd be
whatever.
loud as fuck.
But it would depending on how you mitigate
It'd be
the
an
noise.
engine. It'd be an engine.
Yeah.
It'd be loud as fuck.
And you'd hear from the quad rotors.
Yeah, but what these people are describing is nothing like that. These people are describing things that are silent, that go from 0 to 1,000 miles an hour in a split second, things that defy physics
right.
as we understand them.
Yeah.
This is not something that I think that the U.S. government has. If you look at like Elon Musk company, Project X or SpaceX. SpaceX is right now one of the premier civilian companies, private companies that's making rocket ships. They fuck up all the time.
Totally.
They're in the middle of innovating all the time. He's one of the smartest people on earth. He's one of in terms of technology, he knows as much about propulsion as anyone, and they still can't get it right. They're still trying to figure it out. They're trying to come up with something that could be viable in terms of commercial space flight, and they're working on it daily. And these people are the brightest minds we know of right now that are in this jet propulsion space travel business. There's, Virgin's working on something. There's a couple other companies that are working on things as well. And then you have NASA, which the best they could come up with was the space shuttle.
Right.
Do you think that there was something way better than space shuttle that they just never used, and that they had, and they kept it on the back burner, didn't want to let anybody know, but the way they would use it is they would pick people up and erase their memory and toy
Experiment
with their
on them?
asshole? That's crazy.
Well,
That's less likely than the hundreds of billions of galaxies just in our own known universe, right? Each one with hundreds of billions of stars, each star with who knows how many fucking planets. That's somewhere out there that's something more advanced than us. Maybe 1,000 years, maybe 1,000,000 years.
But
that's figured out how to come here.
I got the same question then. Why hasn't anyone discovered them? Why has SETI failed? Search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
Why
Pulled up
haven't the
nothing.
chimps invented guns?
They've started using more tools, but
Right. Why haven't they invented guns, though?
I don't know.
So why hasn't SETI found UFOs? It's the same fucking answer. They're not advanced enough yet. It's a real simple answer. The industrial age is pretty fucking recent.
Right.
I mean, you think about when people invented cars. You're talking about 1800. That's really recent.
And we've
plane
only used
flights,
radio-
1800s.
High power radio transmission is only in the past 100 years or so.
Right. Well, you ever seen the movie Contact?
Maybe that's an old one, right?
It's Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey. It's based on Carl Sagan's book about contact with space and with aliens and how it's going to go down.
I think I did see it recently. I can't remember.
Interesting take on it. But
Oh,
the
yeah,
idea is that
wait.
they've received the signal that we sent out way back, in the day. Actually, when the first broadcast signal was Hitler announcing the Olympic Games, the start of the Berlin
wow.
Games. And this was the first signal they got. It was a really controversial moment in the movie, or controversy, in the plot, with that once they were trying to decipher the image that was being sent, they realized it was Hitler.
Yeah.
The first thing they see is a swastika, and they're like, what the fuck is this?
They sent it back to us?
And then they had to realize, oh, no, this is the first image that we sent out to space. They wouldn't be able to understand the political or historical context of this. And
Well, so I got a few. There's a few issues I see in terms of aliens and Earth contact. Right, we are substantially more connected, in an evolutionary chain to ants than we are to any alien. So we can't communicate with them for the most part. We kind of can. We understand how they communicate. But when an ant sees a superhighway, this is someone else's quote. They don't think twice. So it's possible there are aliens that have superhighways right above us. We can't tell what it is. Same as a dog doesn't understand other than stay away from it. But one of the issues I think is often neglected in the conversation about aliens is we assume aliens would be on a very similar planet to us. We assume that they would have some kind of gaseous atmosphere, perhaps it's a liquid atmosphere. And one of the things that I would ask of a researcher, because I'm not the expert, is the fact that we have the proper balance of oxygen in the atmosphere to manipulate fire, which allows us to separate elements and then create computers and components and fuels, wouldn't exist on a planet without the same atmosphere we existed in.
Okay, stop. I can answer that really easily.
Yeah.
There's no known propulsion system for any of these crafts. These things are not using fire. They don't have a heat signal. They don't know what they are. They don't know how they work.
I don't mean propulsion. I mean the separation of elements, the manipulation of elements, right? So we melt things and separate them and break them down.
They don't believe that that's how it works.
No, but I mean, like, how do you even start from? I'm sure there's an answer. Let's say you have a species that lives on a planet with no oxygen and has no access to fire. What energy, what dense energy source do they have that will allow them to manipulate matter?
Do you know the Bob Lazar story?
I do.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that he talked about when he first stopped working for Area S4 and the government was tapping his phones, and there's a lot that can be documented about him. There's a lot that can't be. But one of the things that he talked about was a thing called element 115.
Right.
That element 115, this insanely dense element that they use to bend gravity. And that the way he described the way the propulsion system works, it's like putting a bowling ball in the center of a very soft mattress, and that all of the other mattress, all the rest of the mass of the mattress bends around the intense mass of the bowling ball, and that this is how these incredibly advanced aliens from this other planet this is their propulsion system.
That was from Star Trek, though. The concept of warp was around for a really long time.
I think the concept is based on Einstein's theory of gravity. I mean, this is the whole idea. If you could find something that could do that. But here's the thing. When Bob Lazar talked about this in the late 80s, early 90s, this element didn't exist.
Right. Now it does.
It wasn't proven until they did it in a particle collider. I believe it was 2013. So he was talking about this element far before it was, and he's apparently, this is the big rumor, he apparently had taken some of that from a lab and through George Norrie, and was it George Norrie? Yes. They did some experiments on on television and showed that this stuff had made light and fog bend in a way that they couldn't describe.
He also didn't he also claim to see a small alien creature on his way out?
He said he saw something that was sitting down, but he doesn't know if it was a model that they were using, like if they had created something that was supposed to be the size of a thing that could fit in these crafts, because these crafts, he said, were designed for things that were far smaller than human beings.
I'm pretty sure in the initial interview he gave when he went public was that he saw an alien, and then later on changed it, saying, I don't know if it was maybe a model or a puppet.
Yeah, he said he thought he saw something sitting down and two people standing over it looking at it. He said he thought he saw an alien. But he's probably... I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, he said it was literally for like a half a second. Like he's walking by a window and he sees something inside of it. Imagine being a guy who's in your 20s and you're a propulsions expert, and it's been proven that he worked at Los Alamos Labs, and it's been proven that he did put a fucking jet engine. It's been proven that he did put a jet engine on a Honda. I mean, he's a genius. And you talk to him, he's an incredibly smart guy. Now, imagine you get sent off to Area S4, and they show you this thing that doesn't even exist. And they tell you about this propulsion method that they don't understand. And they say that they found this a long time ago in an archaeological dig. And they want you to back engineer it because you're a propulsions expert, and they're running out of options. They've been studying this for decades. No one knows what the fuck it is or how you can make it work. And then they do test flights with this thing. And then he tells his friends about these test flights. After he gets fired, you know how he got fired? Do you know a story about him getting fired?
He leaked it or something, yeah?
No, his wife was fucking her flight instructor.
Oh.
And so when his wife was fucking her flight instructor, they told him he couldn't work anymore. And he's like, why not? Well, they were tapping his phone. Because when you have top secret clearance to work on UFOs, I guess they don't want your wife fucking her flight instructor, because then you're going to go crazy, and you have a lot of imbalance at home, right? So he doesn't know why. They don't tell him why. So he takes his friends and he tells them, "Listen, this is real. They're running these experiments. I know you're thinking I'm crazy. This is what I've been working on." So he takes them to this area where you used to be able to have access to, but once he did this, they closed off access and pushed it far back to where the public has access to. And he showed them these things doing these impossible maneuvers in the desert, in the night sky.
This I remember.
And so then he gets arrested. And so when he gets arrested, he was in fear of his own life. He goes public and tells this whole story. And then they erase his past, they erase his social security number, they erase his education background. Even though people that knew him and knew he worked at Los Alamos Labs, he takes George Norrie of a tour of Los Alamos Labs, knows the people that work there. They all say hi to him. He takes them on a tour around the laboratory.
Yeah.
Shows them around, shows them the devices they use for biometric security. And
I think the one thing you can't ignore is that there was documentation that he did work at one of these places.
Yes.
And they later claimed he didn't.
Yes.
And like I think I was watching the thing on, maybe it was Netflix. I think like he promoted that, right? It was on
Yes.
Netflix. They show the paper like we found it.
Yes.
Like he clearly was there.
he was in the employee register.
right.
Yeah. No.
And, but you know, for me, man, I'd love to believe it all.
He's been insanely consistent about that story.
Yeah.
For 40 years
I want to believe. You know what I mean?
or 30 years, whatever it's been. Yeah, I want to believe too. That's the
But,
problem.
man,
The
Pixar
problem
didn't
is
happen.
I want to believe, but
Yeah.
that's nonsense. Pixar, it didn't happen is nonsense.
Well,
how do you what about Neanderthals?
No,
And
that's
what about dinosaurs? There's no pics.
I'm more so joking, right? What I
Yes,
mean is,
I understand.
show me the evidence, right?
I get it.
Let's, the challenge with any theory, I don't like saying conspiracy theory because they're not always conspiracies, is that people want something to be true. And so they end up looking for things to justify what they think it already is.
Of course.
Instead of starting with what you've got and trying to figure out where it goes from there.
But when you start with what you've got a guy who was living in Vegas, was taking these flights out to Area S4, knows the place, knows it inside out, can describe it very accurately. Also worked at Los Alamos
this
Labs,
proves he was there.
describes that very accurately.
Right.
Yeah.
It proves he worked there.
Yeah, and
But
it also
I-
proves he's also a legitimate scientist.
But what
I
if-
mean, when you talk to the guy, he's a brilliant guy. He's
But-
not a nut.
Right.
But what?
Are you saying aliens?
That doesn't mean aliens.
No, I'm just asking. Like, so
It doesn't mean aliens, but that's what he was told.
Right.
What he was told is this is something that has come from somewhere else, and they're trying to figure out how to work it, how to use
what
it.
if we're in a simulation and this was something that was leftover code, or it wasn't supposed to be placed in this certain iteration?
Or what if there's multiple dimensions that we don't
Yeah.
have access to? Let's take it back to the day that this happened. You're 22. You're logging. You're in the woods. Tell me what happened.
Well, it's just, when you're done working, hard physical labor, everybody's kind of jacked up, and there was a whole lot of chatter in the car. We're just talking away, it's starting to get dark. We just loaded up our equipment. We're headed out. And I looked up ahead, and I saw this kind of glow coming through the trees. First, I thought, no big deal. It was deer hunting season. Thought maybe there was some hunters camped up on the hill up there. Maybe light shining through a tent. It was still something really strange, kind of caught my eye. And one by one, the other guys in the crew started looking, but nobody said, "Oh my God, what's that?" or anything like that. It was just kind of an idle curiosity at first. But when we burst into the clearing where we could see the source of this glow, it was just, whoa, it was just mind-blowing instantly. I inexplicably got out of the truck and ran toward this thing. But I thought it was just going to take off, be gone in a flash. And
So when you say in the clearing, so are you driving on a dirt road?
yeah, it's a dirt road. Trees are real thick. This was a part of the contract we hadn't cut in yet, so trees were a lot thicker there, except for this clearing. And we weren't the only ones that saw it. We found out later. Sheriff had on file people who were in the area that saw it, hunters and fishermen over there at Black Canyon Lake. And the movement that they described was what the crew described when it left. And of course, I didn't see that, but
What did they describe?
they described this glow rising up and streaking off, I believe they said, toward the northeast. There were some people that probably don't want to be public about it, but there was one guy who was just deer hunting, and he worked in military intelligence, and he stuck by what he and his wife saw. They were both together. And another guy that was at Black Canyon Lake, I won't mention any of those guys' names unless they chose to, but found out later that there was more official investigation that nobody talked about at the time. Immediately, though, this was all nonsense, and these guys murdered him, and even my oldest brother, he didn't believe me. He thought they had killed me. What we were doing with the brush that we cut was piling it up. There were piles that were in the clearing so that the Forest Service could burn these piles, when the conditions were right, where it wouldn't spread, wet conditions otherwise, but burning up this excess material to reduce the fire danger in the woods. And my oldest brother was tearing those piles apart. He was certain that my body was under there. And there were some pretty testy confrontations between him and my brother. And I think even my other brother, Dwayne, he initially took that approach, but he quickly became sure that they were telling the truth.
Now, what do you remember when you're going through your mind and you're trying? I mean, this is a story you've told so many times, and this is a story that's been turned into a film, which it's got to be very surreal. But when you look into your memories and you try to go back to that day.
Well, I don't try. It's something I try to block out, but it's unforgettable. And there's...
What do you remember seeing when you ran into the clearing?
Well, the whole clearing was lit up with this weird glow. It's really hard to for any artist or movie to try to duplicate the strange glow there was there. Made everything look really, really pretty eerie, and
did it have a color to it?
It was kind of a golden color, but with a kind of a softness to it it wasn't like beams of light shooting out. It was just this haze of light.
And did it seem to come from a specific part of the craft, or? Most
of the surface seemed to be glowing. There were darker areas that didn't give off light, but it was the parts that weren't glowing. It wasn't so bright that you couldn't look at it, but it had a metallic look to it.
So what did the craft itself look like?
It was classic disc-shaped craft. The years later, there was a report. I can never remember names, but this guy was saying that he worked at Area 51, and they had something in there. He worked with the Tester Model Corporation to create a model of what he was describing, and that's actually the closest of any of the other descriptions I've seen. But I don't think these things have just one type of craft. I think there's many, many different shapes.
What makes you think that?
Well, personal experience. I try not to emphasize these other incidents, but I've seen the glowing sphere. I've seen the giant black triangle. other craft that were a ball of light that you couldn't penetrate the light with your eyes. But
Now, this is after this experience.
I think the reason my brother Dwayne was persuaded more quickly than my brother Don was that he saw a craft in those woods. It was probably 10 miles from there while deer hunting. And it was kind of tic-tac shaped, and that's something that's been observed by, in military reports recently.
Yeah. So you see this thing, this disc-shaped craft,
Yeah.
and then what happens?
It started to move and started to get louder.
Louder.
Yeah. It was, the guys in the truck heard it too. There was a low thunder, is kind of a rumble that you actually sort of felt more than heard. And then there were other high-pitched frequencies. I was talking to a group of students from technical college, and they were really interested in what the sound was like to try to, compare that with theories that they had concerning what might be their propulsion. But the increase in volume, it suddenly got louder as it started to move. And, at the same time, the guys in the truck were screaming, "Get away from there, let's go, get back in the truck, let's go." And which would have been the smart thing to do. But as soon as it moved, it startled me, and I just ducked for cover. There was a log there. I got down behind this log, and they were screaming, "Let's go, let's go, let's go." And I didn't need to be told. I was just going to, stand up and run away. But see, when I jumped for cover, I went down and forward to reach where the log would hide me. And that brought me closer to it. So when I stood up, at that point, that was the closest I was to the object.
How close?
It was still like 8 or 10 feet away, from the surface of it. But that was when the energy discharge happened. I've worked on a number of theories about what might have happened. At the time, some of the other guys on the truck were thinking, immediately Steve said, "It got him." Like, if you shot a deer, you got it,
Right.
And so it might not have been, as we assumed at first, that it was some kind of stun gun or something, but maybe just closing that gap allowed this energy to leap to ground through me. And
Like static electricity or something?
yeah, one thing that really weighs heavy in that direction is that when I found years later that they have satellites or something that record the number of lightning strikes, and that area has the highest frequency of lightning strikes of any place in the continental United States, except for the Everglades. The Everglades has a bit more, but that's over water. So that adds to another theory. What were they doing there?
So that area that has a high level of lightning strikes, do you think it makes sense that they're observing that, or is that why they were there? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, up until a few years ago, you walk down the rim road, and if you see a tree that's been hit by lightning, you can always see it. It's a strip of bark that's just blasted out of there, and it's all bare, and it can actually still survive the lightning strike, but it turns the sap to steam instantly, and it just explodes out the side of the tree, blows the bark off. But I was at a conference where this lady was. I said, "What's this?" And she says, "That's fulgurite." I said, "What's that?" And she says, "That's when lightning strikes the earth. You've got millions of volts, millions of degrees that form these crystals that aren't formed geologically. So I kind of leaned towards this theory that perhaps they were looking for fulgurite, for a very unique kind of crystal that would be formed by that kind of blast of energy. I'd never heard of fulgurite before.
Can you pull up an image of that, Jamie? I'd like to see what that looks like. I know tritonite is something that happens when they call it nuclear glass. It happens when there is either a nuclear explosion or when asteroid impacts hit the Earth. That's it right there.
Well, these crystals are supposed to have very special properties for people who are into crystal stuff, but
What does that say there, Jamie? This is what happens. That's what can. Wow, that's wild.
it's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. That's pretty wild. So it might be that they were looking for that. Well,
Could
who
be,
knows? It
could
may be
be.
something that they use for energy. What is that? That's really when lightning struck Santa created that thing? That's wild. That is wild. Look at that. It looks like a tree coming out of the sand. That's
Guessing
nuts.
that was wet sand.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, well, it's right next to the beach. It must be wet. That is crazy. That's really wild, man.
You should tell Joe about how the government program OSAP was created directly because George wrote this book about a little place called Skinwalker Ranch where the government was studying this property. That happened because of his book. Some DIA guys. Well, you should tell the story of
I
the
visited
link.
that place.
Yeah, but right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you got I think you got a little misled on it.
Tell him how the government study started. From your work. It's fascinating.
So some of it stems back to Lazar. So we did that story in the series in '89. One of the first people to call me after that was a guy I'd never heard of before named Robert Bigelow, a billionaire. He calls me up and says, I was really interested in that. I've been interested in UFOs for a long time. Can I help you? Meaning, can he help fund me? I said, I work for a TV station. I don't need any help. But he was not to be deterred. He then reached out to Lazar. They had he started meeting with him and pumping him for information. And that really amplified Bigelow's lifelong interest in it. He created something called NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science, which he made a science advisory board of the best and the brightest in both the UFO field and the field of consciousness. So they're looking at two questions. Is there life elsewhere in the universe? Is it here? And do humans survive after death? And he assembled this board, former CIA guys, two former astronauts, men who had walked on the moon, Dr. Edgar Mitchell, Dr. Hal Puthoff, physicists, psychologists, really a brilliant little think tank to take on these two topics. I was allowed to be a fly on the wall for some of it, not all of it, but some. And I told Harry Reid about it. In 1996, and he said, can I go? And so he showed up and sat in on the meetings, and he was kind of hooked. Harry Reid was the first person I told about Bob Lazar outside of our newsroom. Before we aired the stories, I'd known him since he first ran for Congress in 1982. Then he becomes Senate Majority Leader. So he had always had an interest in it, but he didn't want it to be known publicly. That does not help your reelection chances. So in 2005, we write the book about Skinwalker Ranch. NIDS, that team, bought the ranch. They were on the property for 7 or 8 years at that point and had hundreds of different incidents that they investigated. They approached it like scientists would. They looked for prosaic explanations. They looked for gravity anomalies. They looked for psychoactive plants. Could there be hallucinations caused by magic mushrooms or something? Are the witnesses lying? They investigated the background of the family that had lived there. And they found out that it could not be explained, all the range of activity there. So it was not only
What
UFO.
kind of activity are we talking
Well,
about?
it starts with UFOs because that's what got their attention. The Uinta Basin in northeastern Utah has always been a UFO hotspot. Everybody who lives there basically has seen them. Balls of light, orbs, structured craft, daylight, nighttime. In 1976, a guy named Dr. Frank Salisbury wrote a book about it, the Utah UFO Display, and he took hundreds of these cases that have been collected by the locals. There was a local science teacher named Junior Hicks who, because he had taught generations of kids science in that area, when people would see UFOs, they'd call up Junior Hicks. And he went and go and investigate them. And he had hundreds and hundreds of files. He gave them over to this guy Salisbury, who wrote a book about it. And he said, these are real, they're going on. But Junior Hicks would disregard any high strangeness cases that came along with the UFOs. Anything weird, Bigfoot, ghosts, anything like that, he thought it was too incredible, and he discarded that. Bigelow buys the ranch. He hears about these stories going on this one property, flies in, meets with the rancher, and by this time, that rancher and his family had lived on the ranch for 20 months. And they were so scared that he, his wife, and his 2 kids were all sleeping at night on the floor in the same room because it had messed with them so badly. Their property had ghost-type activity, poltergeist kind of things, trickster activity. For example, the wife goes shopping to the grocery store. She buys all this food, comes back, puts it on the table, takes it out, puts it in the shelves, leaves the room, comes back in, all the food's back in the bag. She would take a shower in the morning, locks the door, puts a towel and a hairbrush on the cabinet, gets out of the shower, door's still locked, hairbrush and towel are gone. Dad's out in the field. He is digging a post hole, using a post hole digger, heavy piece of equipment. He stops for a second, wipes his brow, looks back, and it's gone. And they find it 2 weeks later up in a tree. They start hearing voices at night in the air, speaking a strange language. They start seeing shapes outside the window at night, big, lurking humanoid shapes, hearing heavy footsteps outside, then hearing heavy footsteps inside. Then their animals started being mutilated. Cows, the tracks would lead out into the snow and then just be gone. Calves, mutilated, cut up with surgical precision. Cats, wiped out, carved up. Dogs that were vaporized. Hundreds of these incidents. They would see holes in the sky, like a great big hole in the sky, and things flying in and out of it. Now, this rancher, college-educated guy, grounded, strictly religious guy, thinks the government is trying to run him off his property. So he's out there at night lurking with a gun, trying to catch whatever government agents are doing this stuff. And it's not government agents. It was something else. They start seeing UFOs of all shapes and sizes. The first one they saw was they thought it was a Winnebago. This ranch is a beautiful place, and it only has one way in and one way out. They see these 2 lights that look like headlights down in the 3rd homestead. How did this guy get past the house here and get down there? He must be stuck. Let's go down and help him out. The lights start coming toward he and his son. Then they go up into the sky, up over the trees, and then poof, gone. These different kinds of orbs, the white ones that were intelligently controlled, not fireflies, not bugs, blue ones that would go, they seem to touch the fear center in your brain. They'd get near them. They look like a little bigger than a softball, made out of glass with a swirling blue liquid, scared the hell out of the animals, and then it scared the hell out of the people too. This literally drove them to their knees with fear. These red orbs that would stampede the cattle. They lost so many cattle that they began to think that they were going to go under. They had these 4 prized bulls. I know I'm jumping around, but there's a lot of stories. They had these 4 prized bulls, 2,000 pounds each, behemoths, very expensive animals because they were raising Simmental cattle. Had them in the corral, and the husband and wife, they always felt like they're being watched. He says to the wife as they're driving to town, "Man, if something happens to one of those bulls, we'll go under. We'll be done." They come back a half an hour later. All 4 of the bulls are gone. They jump out. They're freaking out. Where did they go? Did somebody steal them? Are they rustlers? Looking around all over the place. In this corral is a metal trailer where they used to store tools. And there's only one door into it, and it's locked with this heavy piece of wire. The door is still locked. The wire is still on there. The guy, just as a last resort, he looks into the grating on top of this trailer, and there's the 4 bulls inside. Door's still locked. They're all crammed in there. Now, you could take a forklift. You could have a team of 50 people, and they couldn't get those bulls in that trailer, but there they were. He yells to his wife, "Hey, honey, they're in here." And when he says that, the bulls wake up as if out of a trance, kick the door down, and all got out. The NIDS team, which had been on the property for a couple of years at that point, fly in. They'd been in Las Vegas. They fly back in. They look around. They check out the animals. The whole corral, which is made out of metal, had been magnetized. So whatever technology was used to get those bulls from the corral into that trailer left a magnetic signature. They were there on the property, the NIDS guys, for several years. Bigelow owned it for 20 years. But eventually they gave up. Whatever this thing was, this intelligence, it did not like being stalked, and it played tricks on them. And they never made the stuff public because what are you going to do? Write a paper about this? Who's going to print it? You can't make a documentary about it because they weren't there with cameras.
Is there any evidence? So,
Well-
all this we're saying, those cattle mutilations, I guess that's some evidence, but that's only evidence of cows, and we can mutilate cows. What about all this other stuff?
Like for the first 20 months when the rancher is there, they don't have any evidence because he's not a paranormal investigator. They're not taking photos or something. They want it to go away. So they don't have any evidence of that except for what the rancher told them. But then they talk to the larger community, and the same thing has been happening to all the neighbors. The guy who lives next door had lost all these cattle as well, seized the craft. Sometimes these craft would float around. They looked like stealth fighters with Christmas lights around them, floating around silently.
Again, is there any evidence?
No, not really. I mean,
Yeah.
so Bigelow puts up cameras all over the property, and you have them focused here where some activity had happened before. The thing moves over here. You move the cameras and focus there, it goes away. Toward the end of the study, whatever it was that was there, one of these cameras would rip to shreds. They're up on top of a telephone pole, 30, 40 feet in the air. And there's wires that are secured all the way down the telephone pole. And they noticed that one of their cameras goes out. They figure, well, there's another camera on another pole that should have a view of whatever it was that tore this up, some kind of animal or whatever. Well, whatever it was invisible. And I know it's very frustrating. It certainly was for them and for me to try to write about it, in that this thing didn't want to be caught. It wanted to demonstrate it that it was there, but it didn't want to have evidence. The calf that was mutilated was in, I know it's a lot to handle.
Yeah.
The calf that was mutilated, it was a Sunday morning. It's 10 o'clock on a quiet morning. It's daylight. The rancher and his wife are there by themselves. They're tagging newborn calves, tag their ears. And they tag this one right by the ranch house, 50 yards from their home, and they go off across the property. It's a clear day. It's unobstructed. Their dog is with them and makes a noise that points them back toward that first calf that they had tagged. And the dog indicates that something's wrong. And they see the mom cow is dragging its leg and going around in a semicircle. It's in distress. They go running back over there, and this calf had been completely stripped of flesh. Nothing left but a hide and bone. And one of the femur bones had been ripped out and thrown on the side. Well, they call in the NIDS guys. They bring in trackers. There are no tracks. There's no human tracks, no vehicle tracks, no animal tracks. The thing had been completely stripped of blood. There's not a drop of blood on the ground. It's gone. 75 pounds of meat gone. Again.
Over a time period of
30 minutes. Is there a team of commandos that comes in and does that?
where's
Special
the
forces?
blood go?
Yeah.
And there's evidence of this?
Yeah. It's on video.
Photographs?
Yeah. Video. Yeah.
Can we see that?
Yeah.
Where is it?
I
know where that
made
is?
a movie called Hunt for the Skinwalker. It's in there, right? Is that the only place?
Yeah. It's probably some other places. There's photos and video.
I mean, so I'm with you, man.
What's
Yeah.
the speculation about? Like, why would they do this, and why would they do the cattle mutilations? Like, what is?
Yeah.
Is there any speculation?
Some. So some of it is a demonstration. I mean, it seemed to be a demonstration to get their attention. This trickster element has been reported in other places around the world. There's no hotspot quite like Skinwalker, and I know how weird it sounds. There's no spot like that because there's no spot that's been studied to that extent. The NIDS guys were there Bigelow owned the property for 20 years. NIDS was active for 7 or 8. Then another secret study funded by the government came in under an organization called BASS. That was the money that Reed got. He got $22 million. It went to Bigelow as a contract, and they hired all these people and fanned out all over the world to try to find UFO information, but other related phenomena, things that wouldn't seem normally to be connected to UFOs, but which are. A guy from the DIA had read the book and became interested, and he asked for permission to go to the property. This guy's a double PhD, a brilliant rocket scientist who had seen it and thought there were national security implications, the hole in the sky in particular, with things coming in and out. He wondered if someone was using technology to make these things
Did they
happen.
film that hole in the sky?
No. Again, that's when the rancher is there by himself. So
Right.
he's not a UFO guy. He's not trying to document.
I understand. But is there any evidence of anything weird? Anything other than mutilated cows?
Well, let's see, the video of the camera that was torn up by something invisible. They had something that
So in the video, you can see the camera being torn apart.
you can't see anything. You can't. There's nothing. You can't see anything. You can see before it happens. It's normal, and afterward,
So I think your
How
fir-
much time is
Yeah.
taking place between before and after?
I can't remember. But I mean, could that be hoaxed? Yeah, if Bigelow wanted to. But again, they weren't there to, in the beginning at least, for NIDS, they weren't there to try to prove that aliens are visiting. They're just trying to figure out why all this weird stuff is happening in one spot.
Right.
It mixes in a lot of Native American lore that got mixed in the picture, but it's been going on in that Uinta Basin for 200 years. Why? Don't know.
I mean, our government has studied the so like what is evidence? It's so frustrating to me too. When I was introduced to the skinwalker thing through George, man, I'm with you. Like, what's the evidence? What's going on? The weight of evidence is when you talk to people in the area and they all have these commonalities. Some people died of exotic cancers from burns from above where lights came down and hit them. And that's evidence. Their face is completely irradiated and they fucking died.
So there's the cow.
That's the cow.
So you have a scientist like Dr. Colin Kelleher.
Hold on for a second. That's where they found it?
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Just what in the fuck can that is so crazy. Now, did they scan the area to look for another spot where it could have been slaughtered before it was moved to this area?
Well, that's what they concluded is it had to have been taken somewhere and slaughtered and then brought back. But
Jamie, can
who
you
does
make
that?
that a little larger, please? Can you just zoom in on that? Because that doesn't look very surgical to me. That looks like wolves.
Yeah, it was. There's no.
Just
They actually did an analysis, and it was done with two types of metallic tools.
But look at all the jagged edges.
They said they took samples and they sent them to 2 pathology labs. Didn't tell the guys what they're looking for. You tell us what you can see. And the pathologist said that 2 instruments had been used. One was a heavy machete type instrument that had been hacked, and then there is a scalpel that had surgically removed a lot of the flesh underneath.
It looks like something killed it and then they moved it to that spot. I mean, if I had to guess, the way it's eaten, though, I mean, it looks like it was eaten.
Well, there's no teeth marks. There are metallic marks. There's no
Metallic,
teeth mark.
meaning they
like a
found-
sliced.
Okay.
And
so
then-
something sharp sliced it.
So I think the bigger point is this was happening on this ranch with owners prior to owners prior to owners. I got to talk to a lot of people that knew. So here's the deal. The connection of this. So George does this thing. He reports on this for 20 years. That the government is now studying this ranch, right? Because of deployment or because of all this weird stuff. Why is the government spending money through OSAP to study this ranch and other things? And that's where it gets really fucking interesting. What happens after with our government programs? And that's what you know.
This is before we get to that. This image, like the jagged edges around the rib cage, that's supposedly sliced. That looks
Hacked.
like hacked.
Hacked.
Okay.
I mean, look, it could, let's say it's people doing this, 2 farmers to get them out of there. Let's say it's some program. I mean, although the cattle mutilation thing, you gave me a stack of documents this big, has been studied by the FBI. It's happened all over the country.
Yeah.
No one has ever been caught, not a single person.
More than 10,000 cases.
With all the same types of cuts. I mean, this is not my
No,
expertise.
I've seen a lot of that. It's really weird.
There is
it's
another
really
theory.
weird, and the lack of blood is the weirdest part of it. Because what makes sense to me is that something killed that. They butchered it. They chopped all the meat off of it, and then they removed the carcass from that area and dropped it off
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like, if I had to guess.
That's
'Cause
what NIDS thinks.
There's no way that it was killed right there because you're seeing fresh, clean hay underneath it everywhere. There's no blood, which doesn't make any sense at all.
I think the question is this a government program? Is this something, or is this a scare tactic? It's been happening since the 50s. Like, what
It's a weird scare tactic.
It's a-
Click on that one below it, Jamie. The brown one with the green. Yeah, that one, please. Thank you. That's a weird one too. Like there's like a hole cut out, and there's a bunch of these they found all over the country, and weirdness like organs removed. But the weirdest part about it is it's almost always there's no blood.
Yeah, I just investigated one, which I never thought I would do, but I got a call from a guy in Texas.
You got to see it physically.
Yeah, so right before lockdown, I go out and I'm like, this is so wild, I got to check this out. The guy calls me. It's a pretty freshy one at this point. Now, I'm no expert, but I went and got samples and took them to labs and this sort of thing to see if there were tools used. So here's my experience.
Did you get pictures of this?
Yeah, I filmed
You
the
have it
whole
on your
thing.
phone?
I'll show you after. I got it on my phone. Yeah. So I got great fucking photos. Weird
Well,
shit.
listen, man, just airdrop them to me now, and we'll send them to Jamie, and we'll put it up on the screen so other people can see it.
Okay, so let me...
Yeah, after the show is not going to help us.
While,
Okay.
while you're
Come on,
looking, I'll
silly
tell him
goose.
about one of the theories about the cattle mutilations that Dr. Colin Kelleher developed was that somebody is tracking the spread of like mad cow prions through the food supply, and that they've been doing it under the guise of UFOs. Since no one would take UFOs and cattle mutilation seriously, they just do it in helicopters, and instead of just stealing these cattle, they're tracking how far these indestructible prions travel through the food supply, because it's in cattle, it's in pigs, it gets fed into chickens and things of that in feed, it's in deer. It's called chronic wasting disease in some circles. It's just weird.
Well, chronic
It's just weird.
wasting disease that's a different prion disease than mad cow.
Well,
right?
it's a variation. Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, I
Yeah.
think, too. So the same kinds of things in different species. It is indestructible again. So you hit a deer that's got this, and you grind it up and you feed it to pigs. The pigs get it.
Yeah.
And then it could be passed on to other species, and it shows up in different ways. Kelleher was exploring the idea, well, whether or not it might be the cause of Alzheimer's or a version of mad cow in humans.
Do you
They're all going to you right now. This is
I
a
don't see
recent...
it.
Oh, it says downloading. So,
okay.
I'm downloading them, and then
Oh,
they're...
right. Are you on the Wi-Fi?
No, but it's coming through. Here you
Okay.
go. It's about to go to you. It says waiting.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Boom.
I mean, I guess this does highlight, because this is my very limited amount of...
Can you send those to Jamie too? Jamie, can you
yeah,
put your
are you
airdrop on?
AirDrop, Jamie?
Sorry. Should have had you do that right away. It's ready to roll. His airdrop is open.
I don't see you, bro.
Bro.
Hold on. There you go, young Jamie.
So this is the stuff that you physically encountered.
Okay,
You physically saw this cow, and I'm
Yes.
looking at these images right now, and we're going to show them
sure.
in a second. And this is you said Texas.
Yeah, so...
Where in Texas?
Oh, gosh, what was the name of it? In the Panhandle. I'm blanking. So here's the deal. Oh, yeah, that's it. So I made the movie based on George's work of the same title, Hunt for the Skinwalker, right? And that movie was telling this story about how the United States government was studying this property of land because of UFOs and weird stuff. That and weird stuff included things like cattle.
Pull up this one. There's a lot of weird images, man. This the skin removed around the face,
Right. So this was
leaving the skull.
This is my first chance to see this for myself, because last time I was on your show, it was the ones in Oregon had just happened up at that ranch. And I thought, well, okay, if I'm ever going to do it, now's the time to do it. So I go, I get this call. Now, remind you, this is a rancher. This is their livelihood. It's this huge area of land.
Right there. Stop right there.
They're a very religious community. We go out to the middle of this land, and in the middle, there's this dead cow.
No blood.
No blood. And he had seen it prior, and the reason he called me is because in my movie, you could see this special kind of slice, like a jagged slice that is common to these types of things they think are real mutilations. And he is looking at it, he's like, that's exactly like in the movie. Now, this is a straight shooter. He's a religious guy. He had to ask his pastor if he could even go on camera with me. It freaks him out. So he sees this. Now, he sees dead animals all the time.
And he saw this cow, you said, before? How
Accidentally,
long?
he was out shooting BB guns with his kid, and he's on this big part of land, and he sees this down bull, and he goes over to it, and he's looking at it, and it's unlike anything he has ever seen in all of his years before. It had surgical cuts. There is no doubt somebody cut up this animal with those classic, like the ear gone, two types of tools, like a scissor type. But by the way, I tried to cut it. It is not easy to cut. So they had sharp tools, and then there's like a very thin slice kind of cut. So I got to take it, get samples, take them to labs, and try to see what type of tools did this. How did they do this with no blood on the ground? and all the soil around it was dead. So I was like, well, why is it all dead? Is that a natural thing? So I took soil samples and took them to a lab. And again, I'm outside of my... This is weird to me.
Okay.
But I think it's a real phenomenon. Somebody is killing these animals.
Someone.
However you want to say
Right.
it. Someone is killing these animals in a highly specified technical way that has been repeated since the 50s on. Our FBI has studied it. He has shown me so many reports of these in association with discs, saucers.
Did this guy have any association with discs or saucers or anything?
No, he's just a guy that owns the
So
land.
he just found this cattle that's
Freak.
weirdly mutilated.
Somebody killed it.
Yeah.
And he's like, is this demonic? Is this some sort of Satanist thing? And I said, I don't think so, man. This goes back in history.
Like I'm looking at the cuts specifically, they're very unimpressive.
Well,
that doesn't look like a laser did it or
No.
some
How long had it
incredibly
been out
sharp
there?
scalpel.
No, it was like a serrated. One was a serrated tool, and the
Right.
other.
That's the thing I'm saying. It's like something that we could do.
Oh, absolutely. We'd have to somehow do it though in Texas land, where the guy would shoot you in the face if you go and try to touch one of his cows. See, that's the other thing. No one's ever been caught. Never.
That's what's weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's
a
frustrating too.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to the ranch, the Skinwalker Ranch in the basin, more than 24 times. I've never seen anything. I've interviewed the neighbors. I've interviewed the scientists. These are PhD level guys who had seen this stuff. A lot of times they have cameras that fail. I mean, it's, you've heard that story before, and it's very convenient that it happens just when some giant disc shows up, but it does happen, that their car batteries would die in the same spot. Whatever it was messed with them. And maybe it's humans, maybe it is human technology, but no humans were ever found to be doing this stuff. NIDS was there for all those years. They didn't want to tell anybody about it. They shared the information with me, but you can't publish it. There's no real physical proof, so they just left it there. And I had tried to do a documentary. Ended up, I talked to them into let me write a book about it. But if you're looking for physical evidence and solid proof, they don't have it.
What's the primary are there any primary theories of why they do this to cows? Why someone's doing this to cows?
You need to catch somebody and ask them. I mean, that's
really
look, man,
really weird that no one's been caught. Right. Do you think that it's possible? Do you ever entertain the idea that it's possible that we are the only intelligent life in the known universe?
I tend to restrict myself to the galaxy.
Right.
So I do think it's possible that at the moment there's one civilization in the Milky Way, and that's us. And I think that's important, actually. And it goes back to what I was saying at the start about the astronomy and cosmology being part of the framework within which you have to think. If you're looking for meaning, or you're looking for how we should behave even politically, that has a bearing to me. I mean, imagine that we're the only place where there is intelligence in this galaxy. And how should we behave?
Right.
Should we actually, notwithstanding the fact that we're tiny and fragile things and insignificant physically, should we consider ourselves extremely valuable in that respect? Because there's nowhere else where, I would go as far as to say there would be nowhere else where meaning exists in the Milky Way.
Meaning.
Because meaning, it's one of those things that scientists don't talk about very much, although Richard Feynman, one of my great heroes, did talk about it. There's a quote where he says, "What is the meaning of it all?" It's a great essay called The Value of Science. And so what is self-evidently true is that meaning exists here because it means something to us. So that's kind of an obvious statement. Your life means something to you and me, and so meaning exists. But I think it is a local and temporary phenomenon. I think it emerges. Meaning emerges from configurations of atoms, which is what we are. We are simply that. We're nothing more than that. We're very, very rare configurations of atoms, I think. And so that means that we are, if you go all the way down that line of logic, we are the only island of meaning in the galaxy.
A meaning only to ourselves.
Yeah.
It means something to us because we're the only ones who can grasp the concept. And we are finite. We are a finite organism. We have this temporary existence while we're here. And to us, there is meaning.
Yeah. And I don't know any other way to define it.
Right.
So I'll define it like that.
Yes.
I don't think there's global, otherwise you have to believe there's some kind of global meaning and that's a God type thing. And I don't think I think it's more wonderful and more challenging to us, because we have to take responsibility for it, to say we should operate such that we are it in this galaxy. There's nothing else. I'm sure there are other civilizations out there in the universe, because there are 2 trillion galaxies. I just can't believe this hasn't happened in other places. The question is, how often does it happen, and how widely spaced are the civilizations? And I think they're very widely spaced, and I think there may be 1 or 2 per galaxy on the average. But that, as you said, what you said it beautifully. That what else can we think?
Right.
And what else do you want? I mean, I think what it says is you have to take responsibility for all those things, those spiritual things that you think about and the emotional things you think about. You are responsible for that. You are that, right? That, whatever that is, it exists in you, and it will only exist for a short amount of time. And so, make the best of it would be my view.
It's so unbelievably compelling, though, to consider the idea that somewhere out there's another civilization that may be even more advanced than us, and this thought of it is just so attractive. It's incredible.
There should be, if civilizations are common, or even slightly common, then there should be civilizations ahead of us.
Yes.
Because there's been so much time.
But wouldn't you want to see what that's like?
Yeah, I mean, we've been
so
around.
Compelling.
You imagine the timescales. We've been around as a civilization. Let's give it, say, 40,000 years. I don't know how long our civilization has been around. Let's say that. The galaxy is pretty much as old as the universe. It's 13 billion years worth of time. So the idea that there are no civilizations arose, 100 million years ago, 200 million years ago, 1 billion years ago. And imagine what they'd be like if they'd survived. I mean, we've been around, we've had science for, let's say, since Newton or Copernicus, 500 years at most. And look what we've done. We've gone beyond the solar system with Voyager. We've walked on the moon. We're about to go to Mars, I would think. So we're about to begin colonizing our own solar system. So we've done that in 500 years. So imagine a million years in the future. So it's one of the arguments often used to say there aren't any civilizations out there in the galaxy. It's called the Fermi paradox. Because if you imagine a civilization that's a million years ahead of us, they should have written their presence across the sky by now. You should see them. I mean, you'll see us. If we survive a million years into the future, actually even a few thousand years into the future, we will be exploring the galaxy. We will have spacecraft that are going to other stars. We will be doing it. So our signature will become visible, I'm sure, if we last into the medium term.
Would we choose to not do that? Here's my thought on that: is uncontacted tribes. Like, do you know about the gentleman who was the missionary who visited North Sentinel Island and was killed by the natives? North Sentinel Island, which is a really unusual place because they branched off from Africa 60,000 years ago, and they've been living on this one small island the size of Manhattan. And as well as we know, there's only about 39 of them left, somewhere around there. Yeah. And we're not supposed to contact them. Like, people are not supposed. We're supposed to leave them alone, and they're a rare tribe. When they find them in the Amazon, the uncontacted tribes, our initial instinct is back off, leave them alone. Do you think that perhaps the universe, like if there is a civilization that's a million times more advanced than us, and been around here for millions of years of life as opposed to 250,000, why would they let us know? Like, they look at us dropping bombs on each other and polluting the ocean, sucking all the fish out and putting clouds into the skies of dirt and particles. And why would they look at these crude monkeys? Look at there. They're so far beyond where they need to be before they could join the galactic civilization network or whatever.
It is true. It's an argument that there is an argument as well that technology is so advanced would be difficult for us to detect. I mean, we tend to think of, when you say written across the sky, I suppose it's true. I'm thinking of starships and things like Star Wars, right? Big energy things that you can see the signature of. But actually, it may be that the civilization just becomes a nano civilization, a tiny little
Yes.
nanobot, because that's more efficient. It's a better way to do things. So it's possible, I suppose, that there are space probes all over the place that are so small and are so efficient and use so little energy that we just don't see them. I suppose that is possible.